call the meeting to order. It is 6:01 p.m. First on the agenda is a call to order, and I have to do that via roll call. Mr. Christensen? Mr. Christensen?
Yep.
Thank
I'm
you.
here.
Thank you. Ms. Tower?
Here.
Mr. Bryant? Mr. Bryant?
Jim,
Jimmy, you're here?
Here. I thought I was on mute, off mute. I'm here.
Ms. Fair? Don't forget to take yourself off of mute, Ms. Fair. Ms. Fair, are you here? Jeannie, are you here? I think she's
she's
having.
moving her mouth and I can hear her real lightly, but hardly at all.
Okay, well, I know she's here. I see her on the call. Ms. Jones? Here. Mr. Derricks?
Here,
And Chair is here, so that means all board members are present. All right. Lisa, thank you for recording. We'll go ahead and stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
To
flag
the flag
of the
of the
United States
United States of America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic for which it stands, one
one
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty.
liberty and
all.
justice for all.
Ms. Tower, I'd asked you earlier if you wouldn't mind saying the mission statement. Is that still something you could do for us?
Yes, I sure can.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm pulling it up as, oh, goodness gracious.
I think we're all having some technical difficulties today, so if
Yeah. Could anybody, Lisa, could you flash it on the screen for me? I'm not able to get my agenda like I need to. And then I'd love to read it.
Holly, I just texted it to you.
Awesome. Oh, I'm so sorry I'm making everybody wait. I'm waiting for it to come. Here it is. Got it. The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
Thank you so much. All right. The meeting agenda has been posted since Thursday. Does anyone have any changes to the meeting agenda?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to add an item about a piece of mail that came to me today from the school district. You can add that somewhere for discussion.
Okay. Let's see. Do you want to put that under school board report, perhaps?
That'd be fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other changes to the agenda? All right, then we need to approve the agenda with that addition to an email from the school under 2.4. Any other discussion of the agenda? All right, then we'll do a roll call vote. We'll start with
Need a motion.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
Second
I
by
can
Mike.
second. Okay, Mike?
All right, thank you. Any other changes or discussion? All right, we'll make the roll call vote, starting with Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Ms. Fair? I heard her. Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Derricks?
Aye.
Mr. Christensen?
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so the agenda is as presented with that change. As always, we include the educational plan in our packet, and so you will see that is included. We do realize that the new version of the board book is a little bit cumbersome, and it's difficult for all of us to be adjusting to that. So as we try and switch over, we'll do our best to try and keep up with these changes. I know it is difficult. I was having some struggles today with it myself. So we do have some calls in to see if we can, why the changes even occurred and if we can go back to an easier version or if they're going to be making this easier to use, because it really doesn't seem to be very user friendly. So thank you for your patience as we get going on this new board book. There's also a lot of people on the call today, and so it is making some of our work a little bit difficult, I think, technically here. I know that Janie's been struggling. I'm struggling a little bit. I can't see, even though I have the grid listed and have it downloaded, I can only see one person at a time. So I will do my best to call on people as I can. If we can just keep the chat box open for those board members, that they can put their name in the queue so I can call on them and we can avoid talking over one another, that would be very helpful as well. I see that there's 51 people on this call, which makes a quick bandwidth a little bit more challenging, but we love that you're all here and thank you for being a part of our meeting tonight. Janie has her name in the queue. And we're having a hard time hearing you, Janie. I don't know what's with that, but go ahead and try. I'm sorry, dear. I see that you're trying to talk and I hear nothing. Do you want to try? We can take a pause. And do you want to call in on the call number and see if that would work? Kevin, thanks for that. I've tried that too. It's just not working. We'll give Janie a minute to try and call in. And thank you for your patience. Oh, are you there, Janie?
Can you hear me at all or not?
Yes, we
Yep.
can hear you.
Oh, good. It is saying when I went out and came back in, Pam, it is saying that because of how many people are on the call that my mic was not working. So I just kind of reiterate what you just said before. So sorry about that.
Yes.
But
If
you
we
can hear me now, correct?
What's that?
You can hear me now, correct?
I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
It's okay. We're all trying to work through this, so thank you. We do have some recognitions and upcoming events. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share?
I'd like to share one recent development. After the discussion earlier about potential plans for this coming year, and again, the emphasis is on potential. We haven't decided anything. But there was a community member who reached out to me about the possibility of donating some money to help the school use the Jefferson School. And after a couple of phone calls that this person made, the Wings Foundation here in Red Wing made a sizable donation, and then 3 alumni have also pledged a donation towards technology purchases at Jefferson School if we use it for this upcoming year. So the total contributions, led by this group of, Wings Foundation and others, is $50,000. So I think that's remarkable, and certainly a sign of support from the community that, they're with us in this and they will help us where they can.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I have also received several comments, as I know other board members have, from community members, retired teachers, grandparents, and parents in the community that have all expressed a willingness to do some volunteering for our school district if and when we get to be back together. And so I think, as Red Wing always does, we come together in times of need, and I think that is remarkable and speaks well to the wonderful community that we live in. So thank you for that. Other recognitions and upcoming events. I will remind our board that we have 3 August nights where we can sit in on a webinar, and I don't have that in front of me, but I know, Heidi, you have more information about that as well. I just had it in my hand. Too many pieces of paper, I guess.
I was going to bring it up later, but sure, let's stick it out there now. It's a virtual summer seminar, so I think this actually helps people with the scheduling to do these sessions. It's in the evening on Wednesdays in August 5th. The way that school boards can improve school mental health and a legislative update. Wednesday, August 12th, communication throughout COVID, superintendent evaluation in COVID, and some breakout sessions also that night. Advocacy, action, and lessons learned, and one on Race 101. And then Wednesday, August 19th, providing a truly equitable education for every child, and a case law update. And those are Wednesdays at 6 p.m. If evenings aren't your thing, that'll all be taped, and the recordings will be available at 9 a.m. the following day. So those are some good opportunities for us to kind of participate in lifelong learning as school board members.
Yes, that's wonderful. Found it. All right. Any other recognitions or upcoming events? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on in our agenda to public comment. Karsten, have you received any public comment on your end?
No, I did not.
Okay. I have received 2 letters, and both women have asked that I read them on their behalf. And so the first one I received is from Tracy Carlisle. She lives at 370 Charleston Drive here in Red Wing. And she writes, to whom it may concern. On June 29th, 2020, the Red Wing Public School District emailed a return to school parent survey. Information obtained was parent guardian, first and last name, address, transportation question, 4 questions on 3 back to school options, activity athletic question, oldest child's name, and oldest child's grade. The school district used that personal identifying information and accessed information from educational records about race, special education, and qualified for free lunches. This information was then included in the survey results that went out to the public. The Red Wing School Administration said it accessed this information so that voices from all people were heard as we implement changes for the fall. The School Policy 515 addresses the protection and privacy of pupil records. I've requested from the administration the part of the policy that allows for what they did. As far as I can interpret, consent was needed to access the educational records. In number 6, disclosure of educational records, B, prior consent for disclosure not required. Number 7 talks about allowed studies that are conducted in a manner in which, in a matter which does not permit the personal identification of parents and students. Minnesota Statute 13.05 sub 4 mentions the limitations on collection and use of data. Information shall not be used by government entities for any purpose other than those stated by the individual at the time of collection. Red Wing Public Schools did not state that they would use educational records at time of collection. United States Code Title 20, Section 1232G-C protects the rights of privacy of students and families in connection with any survey, not just the results. And then she also cited other sources and said, please protect our student rights. Sincerely, Tracy Carlisle. So that is the letter.
If I could just respond real quickly. We did talk about this issue actually with several people over the last a few days. And we briefly talked about it at the policy committee meeting today. You know, the thinking is that we will change, you know, how we will ask for information from parents in the future. And we're going to review that in the policy committee, just to review standards and then kind of expectations. So we will be taking a look at that. And, you know, our plan is to further enhance our processes, you know, as we solicit feedback from people.
Thank you. And then the second public comment I received is from Alyssa Johnsrud, 427 West 3rd Street in Red Wing. She says, my name is Alyssa Johnsrud. As Youth and Family Program Coordinator for Hispanic Outreach of Goodhue County, I have some concerns about the information included for the return to school plan for Red Wing Public Schools. How does the methodology of this inquiry into parent attitudes invoke the stated guiding principle of equity if you don't release the specific details of how you conducted the survey? How it was distributed? Was it distributed in Spanish or only English? Who received it? Did any of you follow up? Did you do any follow-up efforts to get responses from families that didn't respond? How did they make the survey, make sure that the survey was accessible? Was it only email, online, or was it in print with translations offered? The listening session did not work. I know of at least 3 individuals that tried to call into the listening session to voice their concerns and were not able to get through ever to express themselves. I do not think this can be used as a credible data source for determining parent attitudes when the methodology of it made it impossible for many parents to participate. It is later stated that parents from some demographic groups were less likely to respond to the survey. What is being implied with this statement, or what is the significance of it? There was a 31% response rate for student colors as opposed to 62% response rate for white parents. Even more staggering is the comparison of the 28% response rate for Hispanic families when put beside the 62% response rate for white parents. If this survey was conducted with equity in mind, what efforts were taken to try to make it conducive to equitable response rates? This significance of a gap in response rates indicates that this survey was not carried out with equity in mind. We need more transparency when it comes to such crucial data that will impact our students and our community.
Yeah, and if I could respond there briefly as well. I think Alyssa makes some very good points. And, you know, really the purpose of the survey was to make sure that all voices are heard throughout the committee or throughout the community, not just those of certain groups of people. You know, we want to hear from everyone. And ironically, just like Alyssa pointed out, you know, our own survey should have been better accessible by our parents who speak Spanish. And really, that's one of the things we learned from the survey itself, because, you know, there were differences in terms of who submitted those surveys. And in my mind, it's a self-critical question. You know, if we aren't reaching everyone or receiving feedback from everyone, then the school district needs to redouble its efforts to make sure that we get feedback from everyone. So we will do that as we move forward. I will say that I think she mentioned that there were three people who didn't have their voices heard because of the some problems with the call-in system. And so I would encourage Alyssa to reach out to those three families and have them, contact me directly, or we can all meet together so we can hear their thinking as well.
You're muted, Pam.
Yes, I am, but I see that your name is in the queue, Jim.
I realize we're not supposed to comment on this. I'm not going to, but I hope we have this discussion about this survey later on in our meeting, because I think we all need to, because we all think have gotten some information or feedback from people in the community too. So we need to have more than just this little time frame for this discussion.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll be able to take time during that part of the meeting. Obviously our focus has to be on, the return to school plan. But a big part of that is to make sure that we hear from all voices in the community. So I think it's a natural discussion topic as part of that.
Jim, I made a note to make sure that we cover that under 4.1 fall openings. So we'll circle back around that if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing no other public comment, and again, both of those ladies asked me to read those letters on their behalf. We will move on to the next school board meeting agenda item, which is school board reports. And I'm just going to go down our list here. Is there any updates from the finance committee tonight?
Nothing of any real substance. Waiting for, we reviewed where we were this year compared to last year. We're basically waiting on what I think we updated. I know this is the first meeting, isn't it? So everything is in such limbo. We were basically just going over what where our money was situated right now, uncertain as to how many students we'll be getting next year. That's very much in flux. And I think there was something else. I don't have it in front of me and I can't bring it up fast enough, but Heidi or Jim, do you have anything else?
No, I don't. I think we are limbo, waiting to see what is decided here for this coming school year in September.
Right.
No, I have nothing to add. I think that's just where we're at. I do have some more information about impact on the next federal assistance package with education. So I can get to that here shortly.
All right, that would be good. Although it didn't sound promising from what I saw. Yeah, this thing's not loading fast enough. So, but basically it's, we're waiting, sitting here in limbo.
Well, and I think a big piece of this is we simply, don't know all of the costs that we'll take to respond to an in-person learning scenario. Obviously, we'll be talking about that later, but thinking about all the unbudgeted expenses, where, we need extra PPE, we need different kind of staffing that just out of necessity if we open up another site. And then all the construction work and costs that might go into that. So yeah, it's just more of the same of we're waiting and seeing and we're doing our best.
And we also need to take into consideration what happens if we do have contact between students and teachers, and if something happens, a student gets sick, do we hold the students in that classroom back for a week, 2 weeks. If a teacher gets sick, are they out for 2 weeks? How do we find substitutes? I think substitutes they were a big problem. I think they're going to be a bigger problem now.
Mhm.
And, but anyway, that's all just to come, and it's really not what we discussed in the finance meeting, but it is financial stuff that is going to impact the district and the state as well. And that's all.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Mr. Derricks, any updates from the operations committee?
We did not meet. Just because of 4th of July. And everything's kind of going the way it is, and I guess we'll get updates on Jefferson and such later.
All right, thank you. Ms. Fair, any updates from personnel?
Again, kind of the same thing. I don't think that we have anything new. I think we have lots of, upcoming negotiations that'll be going on. So I think it's just prioritizing where we're going to start first as we get going again in August here. And I would be interested, and I'm sure we'll touch on this. I know Mike brought up about the kindergarten numbers and such, and I know that's something as a personnel committee we would look at. So this is just for Carson and I'm writing it down. That's something that I just have a question about, of how we're going to look at that, come next month. So thanks, Pam.
Thank you. Legislative and Policy Committee, Ms. Jones, any updates from there?
Yes, well, we met 2 hours prior to this board meeting, and we finished the series review of the 300 policies. Some very short policies, basically dealing with the superintendent's position and administrative pieces. Lots of good notes. We also reviewed very briefly policy 425 on staff development. Again, another concern for this district as we want to carry out our referendum promises, and then also in adapting to our current situation, a lot of training needs. And of course, if we have a well-trained staff, that's to the benefit of the students. And we also looked at policy 1000, and I can't remember the exact title, but inclusivity education plan. And that has to do a lot with some of the concerns that we have received as a school board about diverse populations being represented in curriculum. How is that represented at different grade levels? And we think that's going to be a larger discussion for the board. And we are recommending, and so we expect to see that on September 28th. We will be doing some work ahead of that to prepare you. And we think it should be an annually reviewed policy. We have a number of those. We'd like to add this policy to that list. So those are kind of the highlights, but a lot of good discussion. If you want, I can continue with an MSBA update, or do you want to run through some other things first?
Heidi, while you have the floor, if you could move to MSBA, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. So you heard about the summer seminar pieces, and I think you got in your mail today a director update with my name and picture on it. But basically, you had a special Minnesota School Boards Association meeting last Wednesday. Minnesota State High School League led off with that. As you might guess, they are in dire financial straits with no sports and no tournaments potentially. And that's almost $4 million is a good chunk of their budget. So you are going to start hearing, I think, in the year ahead or even months ahead, that they are going to have to change their financial model, and it will impact districts across the state. Their reliance on tournament income is probably not going to work under the assumptions that they've worked under in the past. I've already given Carson a preview, just a thumbnail sketch of that update. So I just want you to be prepared that there will be a large discussion about how Minnesota State High School League moves forward. And then the second piece of business that we spent a lot of time on with a conversation with Senator Tina Smith's office. Basically, they were gathering intel about what are the needs of Minnesota school districts and how might that impact their construction of the next federal aid package in the COVID response from the federal level. So if you want to track, it's HR 6800 HEROES Act, which is currently out there at the federal level. This is meant to assist local governments. They're discussing expanding sick days, Family Medical Leave Act, unemployment and food assistance. So that'll impact our employees and our families. Expanding the PPP, the payroll protection piece. And then COVID testing and contact tracing, I think, will be even more important if we pull together in-person learning. What is our responsibility for gathering information about anybody that might come in contact with our employees or our students? And there's other pieces to that, but that's kind of all that's relevant to education right now. Another information piece you should know is that the House and Senate on the federal level will be in recess over basically the month of August. So if you have any inclination about contacting your representatives at the federal level, August is a good time to do it because they're usually back in their home states. They're usually holding some town hall meetings. It's going to be an active election season, but it's going to look like no other since they really can't do door knocking and such. So if board members are motivated, please forward your concerns to federal legislators. Now's the time where they kind of put pause before they go back into session in September. So that's kind of a long update, but I wanted you to know that that's some of the pieces that MSBA worked on last week. That federal package is estimated to be about $400 billion. At least that's what they're working on now for a number. And really, with states financing being extremely impacted, the federal government is probably the only avenue for shoring up some of the expenses that unbudgeted that we're going to see moving ahead. So thank you.
Are there any other school board reports that anyone would like to share? All right, seeing none, then we'll move on in our agenda. Mr. Anderson, Superintendent Anderson.
You know, besides the reopening plan, I'd just like to highlight one issue or one topic. The American Indian Parent Advisory Committee did pass a resolution indicating concurrence with our programming for American Indian children. You see the summary page in the board packet. I think we have a good working relationship with the parents of our American Indian kids. I will say that, you know, we will be looking at our processes this year to make sure that our parent advisory committees are meeting regularly, that we're hearing concerns, that we're sharing information, and that we're enhancing student achievement results. So, you know, we do want to reinvigorate that committee and the work they do, and you know, we're pledging to do that. So again, just for your information, we do not need a vote. It's really just to let you know that that vote of concurrence did occur.
All right, thank you. And then moving on then to the consent agenda. Anybody have anything that they would like to change or add or pull from the consent agenda?
Yeah, I do have one addition, and that would be under a new category called resignation. We do have the resignation of Jesse Nelson as a teacher and coach effective July 20th, 2020.
All right, so should I put that, I'll put that as a number 5 resignation, because number 1
Yeah.
is minutes, 2 is claims, 3 is reassignments, 4 is new hires. So we'll add another category 5 resignation, Jesse Nelson, as of this date, 7/20 of 20. Any other changes, additions? Anybody need to pull anything? Seeing-
not, I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented with tonight's edition of 3.5 Jesse Nelson resignation as teacher and coach.
I second.
Any other discussion? Okay, and then now we'll vote on the consent agenda. We'll start with Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Ms. Fair,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Mr. Christensen,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. All right, thank you. All right, and then the next agenda item is donations and grants. Ms. Anderson, do you want to comment on that?
I'll just mention that we do have a grant that was given by the Goodhue County Health and Human Services Department for $2,319. You can see the designated purpose is for helping families heal the big feelings of little people. And you can see kind of the mini grant application that was approved by Goodhue County.
I think that's just a great piece. I mean, it's low cost, but we needed some help, and it has the potential to really positively impact that at-home learning experience. So thank you, staff, who put that together. I really appreciate it.
Mhm. I was just going to mention that, thank you, because I know grant writing is kind of above and beyond, and it's a little extra work, but we definitely appreciate that, and it has great rewards, so thank you for that. It is a resolution roll call. And so we need a resolution moved and seconded, and then we'll roll call vote that.
Mike will move that resolution forward.
Thank you. A second?
Janie can second it.
Thank you. Moved by Mike, seconded by Janie. And Janie, we'll start with your vote.
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Mr. Christensen,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Thank you. And again, thank you for that great work. All right, Mr. Anderson, I will bring it back to you.
May Sorry, I didn't put my name in, Pam. May I ask a question here quick?
Sure.
I assume what Carson announced earlier this meeting, those donations towards Jefferson and stuff will be in our next board packet. Is that correct?
Yes. Before we accept the donation, it'll be part of the board packet resolution. I just received 2 phone calls from people pledging the amounts, and so that's why it'll have to come at a subsequent meeting.
Right. I just wanted to clarify for people why that wasn't in this meeting for people that it just came in, but it'll be at a future board meeting. So, and I want to thank the people doing that. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, now, Mr. Anderson, I'll bring it back to you for information on fall opening for our next agenda item.
Great. In June, Governor Walz did direct school districts to develop plans for reopening this fall. He asked us to come up with plans for 3 different scenarios that could be used repeatedly during the year, going from one scenario to another because of the changing complexities of COVID. Scenario 1 would be in-person learning. Scenario 2 is a hybrid. And scenario 3 is distance learning. So what hybrid means is that each school would come up with a plan on how to provide a combination of in-person learning and distance learning, depending on the capabilities and interests of the school district. So those plans will look very different depending on the school. Since that time, the administrative team and I have been kicking around all sorts of possibilities in terms of what that could and should look like. We're cognizant that the school board will make the decision, obviously, but we wanted to at least do some prep work so that we could come up with either options or a recommendation. I will tell you at the onset that one of the biggest driving forces in some of the significant changes we're talking about is based on transportation. Because of the locations of Burnside and the high school and our grade level centers, we have a significant challenge to try to get down to somewhere between 13 and 30 kids per bus at a given time. And because we typically run buses at 60 or 70 kids, but the expectation is that we get down to significantly fewer kids so that we can get kids to school safely. And so that concern sort of led to thinking about all sorts of things. And then that eventually led to this, particular recommendation. By the way, before I forget, I'm not looking for approval tonight or vote tonight on the recommendation. I just thought we should present information and then answer questions that you have. So I'll briefly go over some of the highlights of the plan, and then Jess will give some of the details, related to each of those areas. First of all, I want to be crystal clear to everyone that we will offer distance learning to any student who chooses to learn from home. That was something that the governor allowed in guidance that he gave in June. We expect that guidance to continue. And so we will offer distance learning to anyone who requests it. In terms of the building and grade configuration, our suggestion is to keep Jefferson School, which is currently under a purchase agreement with Jim Patterson, but we'd like to keep that school for the upcoming school year. We'd also like to change the grade configurations of all of our buildings. We would have Sunnyside, Jefferson, Burnside, and Twin Bluff be converted to K-6 schools, and then convert Red Wing High School to a 7 through 12 school. We've talked about some variations to those grade configurations, but right now this is our leading recommendation. Another thing I'd like to point out is that regardless of the scenario at a given time, students would take the same classes from the same teacher. Only the location of the student would change depending on the scenario. So we're trying to keep things as consistent as possible for students, knowing that they might be in school or they might be home when they're doing the learning. Another instructional highlight of the change is that we recommend changing the schedule at Red Wing High School to a traditional block. That means each student would take 4 classes each day and the same 4 classes for a whole quarter. That's what a traditional block is. And then that high school student would take a different set of 4 classes for second quarter and so on throughout the year. The reason that we want to propose that instead of an 8-period day is that it significantly reduces the number of interactions that kids will have with each other. Instead of going to 8 different classes of, let's say, 30 kids in a class, that person would go to 4 classes with 30 kids in a class. That's if we're in-person learning. So that's the purpose for that. There's some other benefits too. It enables students to have a stronger relationships with teachers because teachers will be, working with a smaller number of students in a particular quarter. And I think it will alleviate some of the stress that students and staff members will have as they're shifting between scenarios. We've really focused a lot of effort on providing in-person learning to every student in grades K through 4. When allowed by the state. And we want to do that even if we're in hybrid learning. So our intent is to do that during in-person learning and hybrid learning. Of course, if the state tells us we have to have distance learning, then we need to follow that, even though we likely provide childcare for emergency workers. You know, the schedule for grades 5 through 12, when we would be in hybrid learning is, you know, one group or cohort A would have in-person classes on Mondays and Tuesdays. The other cohort would have in-person classes on Thursdays and Fridays, and then you know, distance learning the other 2 days, and then everyone would have distance learning on Wednesdays. So you know, each student would be in the building 40% of the time, or 2 out of 5 days every week for in-person learning, but they would be learning new material each day throughout the week. 2 more things that are supportive of our plans. The next one is a really hard one for me to suggest. And that is the plan calls for extending our no bus zones to 2 miles for all students. Right now we have a 1 mile no bus zone for elementary kids, 1.5 for middle school kids, and 2 miles for high school kids. The problem is that the only way we can get our bus ridership down to specified criteria from the Centers for Disease Control and others is to increase that no bus zone. Obviously, that has a significant impact on parents. I'm hoping that after the school year begins, we could look at that and try to narrow those no walking zones, depending on who's riding the bus and those kinds of things. But that's a significant negative to the plan. And then finally, we are planning to provide a Chromebook to all students in grades K through 12, including new touchpad Chromebooks to students in grades K through 5. So we will essentially implement a one-to-one technology initiative this coming year. We kind of dabbled in it a little bit in the spring because people had access to Chromebooks, but we want to do that next step, and so we're ready to do that. So, you know, I've also talked in other communications about how we would be enhancing safety with the plan, and that we really want in-person learning for kids K through 4 every day if we're in in-person learning or hybrid learning. That's the goal. And so that's a quick summary of the plans. I know I provided some written communications earlier, but I don't know if you want to go into Jess's presentation or if you want to go over some questions now.
Mr. Bryant, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I haven't studied it thoroughly, but have you looked at River Falls? I know it's a whole different state, but they certainly is the same type of thing, educating children. They're looking through in-school learning for, I think it's K through 5, because they figure after about grade 6, you can probably be home more alone than the younger ones. So that kind of interested me when, you know, they did the K through 5, maybe K through 6 for us because of the schools we have and the distance learning for and the hybrid approach for 7 through 12. Have you, I don't know how those numbers would look at for us in our busing, but I thought that was quite attractive on the outset because it give the K through whatever number in school and helps those kids, the parents that are struggling to find childcare while they're trying to work and be home and all that. So have you, or is this kind of the K through 5 approach that you're looking at, a K through 4 approach that you're looking at, and is 5th grade old enough to be home alone if necessary?
Yeah, our original plan is that we wanted to provide in-person learning every day for kids in grades K through 6. So we kind of started the process with that in mind, because then each elementary school would provide in-person learning every day for every child in their school. The problem came down to personnel. we need enough adults in the room to split up our classes into 2 classrooms in most cases. And that's because we need to follow social distancing guidelines in each class. And so Kevin Johnson and Alan Gaylor and Shonda Jorgensen went around the district and determined how many kids we could fit in each classroom. As a result of that, most of our classes would be split into 2, which requires, adult supervision, obviously. And we just ran out of people to do that. And so then we looked at K-5, and then eventually we landed on K-4. At this time, we're confident we have enough adults to provide direct supervision for each classroom, but we wouldn't be able to go up to K-5 or K-6. So, yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because, yeah, we want to offer in-person learning option for as many kids as possible, especially our youngest learners. And so we landed at K-4. I think Hastings is planning K-5. You mentioned River Falls at K-5. Other school districts are not able to do it because they don't have enough building space or staff to do everyday in-person learning, in a hybrid model. So, yeah, as far as the other thing that River Falls is doing, we do have, options of in-person learning, hybrid learning, or distance learning for the high school or grades 7 through 12. And we can make it work regardless of the scenario. Hybrid option might be preferable in a lot of ways, just because that would significantly reduce our transportation needs at the high school. And we need some additional help. We can have a 2-mile no bus zone. We can have neighborhood schools. We can have volunteers, taking their own kids to school. But right now, the transportation people are telling me we'd still need some extra buses and drivers that are just not available to anyone, probably throughout the state or country. So we're still fine-tuning our transportation, but those are some of the issues that went behind it.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was a really great question, Jim. Do you have a follow-up?
Just taking it a step further, at some point during this, and I didn't print out the agenda, just killed a few trees today printing stuff out. Concern has been addressed or expressed about when they're in school, the safety of the students, the safety of the staff, what's the safety of everything around them as they move, what happens if, all that. We can do the ifs all day, but realistically, what are we looking at, or is that somewhere farther on, how we're going to address day-to-day safety concerns that people have?
Yeah, I definitely think we should review that either with the operations committee or school board or both. We actually started on that work very early in the process so that we could order equipment and supplies before others did. And so, we have masks on hand. We have face shields on hand, at least for staff members. We've ordered signage so we can have kids walking one way in the hallways. Some of our, we were planning to provide meals in the classrooms instead of kids walking to the cafeteria because we want to minimize interactions, wherever possible. And there are a lot of other things that we've kind of landed on, but what I'd like to do is kind of present all those in a report, and there will be some deciding issues that we'll have to talk about. Should we require masks for all students? Should we require masks for teachers and other staff members? Should we be taking temperature checks as kids walk into the building? There are a couple of key issues that we still need to decide. And so I would hope we can do that in early August. One other thing that I'll point out, kind of related to your question, Jim, at the elementary levels, if we keep Jefferson School, that really enables us to spread kids out into, the spaces we have. Most notably, our plan, for the K-4 kids, would be that they would be split into, 2 classrooms. So instead of having a class of, let's say, 24 kids in one room, in most cases that would be split into 2. So each adult would have 12 kids to supervise at a time. That really helps with social distancing. Once again, at the elementary level, we'd provide food or meals in the classrooms. A teacher would take the kids out, for recess. So once again, we can kind of control, who interacts with who. We have quite a few operational things already planned, but I would like to present those at an upcoming meeting because we'll need your guidance and, at least we want you to know what we're talking about so that we can talk to the public about it.
Thank you. Jeannie?
Yeah, I just had some more questions about the transportation, and I know this is our time to kind of ask questions, Carson. So I had gotten a couple more this afternoon, just specifically about the transportation obstacles. Some people that work, kind of wonder again on the busing capacity when people are flying in planes. Why the busing is such a different scenario. So that was one question about why 200 people on a plane but only 13 on a bus. And then the second one that kind of corresponds is, are we looking at the ride as an option in Red Wing? So I know these are both surprises to you, so I don't necessarily expect you to have the answer to all of it, but if you can just share a little bit, because I know in June we didn't really get to, fully kind of talk about this transportation issue, which seems to be the main factor in a lot of these decisions. So.
Yes. The estimated maximum of 13 came directly from First Student. Of course, they're a national company, and so that's what they've been advocating. Their first claim is that was the maximum number of kids that we could put on a bus at a given time to maintain social distancing. I think there's been some additional interpretation. They've been, measuring the height of the seats between students and double checking the numbers. Right now, I think we'll be able to fit somewhere between 25 and 30 kids on the bus at a given time. And so that's what we're assuming our calculations are based on. And that would be, roughly 1 student per seat plus some siblings. So for example, if you have kids from the same family, let's say 3 elementary kids going to Sunnyside, they could sit in the same seat, and then we'd have to social distance others. So they're getting down to the specific information about who would go to which school and, how many siblings might be riding, so that they can figure that out. But right now we're assuming that it's somewhere between 25 and 30 kids on a bus at a time. I'm sure that the governor will be updating us on the state's expectations in terms of bus capacity. That's obviously a big issue for everyone throughout the state. In terms of the ride, I took a minute here to take that note. And so we can certainly contact the ride to see what they are planning to do in terms of transportation beginning in September. And we can certainly explore that option as well. The key is that we want to make sure that kids are safe, on any bus. And, they have to follow state guidelines. They have to be socially distanced. We'd have to monitor, are we sharing the ride bus with adults, those kinds of things. But I think it's a viable option that could help us with that. We're also looking at whether or not we can legally put general ed students on special transportation routes. I think that's a logical thing that the state should allow. It just makes sense. There would still be a cost associated with it. But we're hoping we can alleviate some of our transportation needs that way.
Thank you. And then just a quick follow-up, maybe in the future, when you kind of give us the safety discussion about kind of some of those choices that the board will be talking with, it might be good to have in the background of what, there are childcare centers, and we as a district are providing emergency care. So it might be good background information to know, what is the Y doing and what is Kids Junction doing right now, just to kind of give us some, ideas about what current childcare centers are doing, because there are kids in childcare that, are doing this, with safety and stuff. So if that information can kind of be part of that discussion, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I could find information on all childcare options, but certainly, we'll be reviewing Kids Junction for what we can do there, and at least acknowledge, some different kinds of programs that are available in the public. So, I don't want to promise a comprehensive report, but I think we can come up with information that you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that most of them are kind of within the same guidelines. So yeah, just kind of a brief general way of how kids are being taken care of now would be important. Thanks.
And actually, in that same vein, Janie, I was having a discussion with a childcare provider this weekend, and she said, if we had any questions, to definitely reach out to her, because they've been having a business as usual and taking care of kids, and they've been very successful. There's been no COVID-19 in their facility, so I think there is a lot to learn there. So we might as well be talking to one another and finding those things out. As I find in my queue, I believe that Holly is next.
Yes, thank you. Karsten, can you speak a little bit more to what you stated about masks?
About masks?
Masks.
Yeah, we have about 10,000 masks currently in stock. And I know this is a significant issue that people have been debating about, throughout the community and nation. So we have about 10,000 in stock. I will tell you that the comfort of the mask makes a big difference. And the masks that we have are very comfortable. Sometimes I don't like wearing masks because they're too hot or they're too tight or something like that. But the masks we have are really good. We've administratively, we talked about, whether or not the mask should be required to students, should be required for staff members. We'll need to make that decision. But first we wanted to focus on, which buildings that we're going to have, the grade configurations, because that triggers so much other work. We need to get going on that. And we didn't want to suddenly throw everything into a political discussion about whether or not we'd require masks. So we're kind of focusing on structure right now, and waiting to hear what the governor might say as far as mask use in schools and other public spaces.
Okay, thanks.
Did that answer your question, Holly?
Yep,
Okay.
That's what I wanted to hear.
That's a great question. Thank you. Arlen.
Yeah, I want to applaud you first, Karsten, and the administration for coming up with something. I'm sure there are a lot of people that would like to see things different, and there's no way we can accomplish all that one way or another, and especially when we're moving with a target, we don't know where the governor's going to go here in a week or two. The mask issue might be decided by him. The mask issue could be decided by the county. The mask issue could be decided by the city to require indoor. There's so many variables on the mask that I'm glad we're prepared with masks. I think you've come a long way with a scenario that I think is probably workable, but a lot of unknowns too, because even on the staff end, we don't know who's going to be able to work, who can't. And I think it's fair to not acknowledge that for everybody that's concerned, but I think from what I'm seeing, we are going to work with all our staff and all our students to do the education for them in the best possible way, which may include for those that don't feel safe to stay at home the whole year. Going back to the busing issue, I'm glad to hear that maybe we can get that number up a little higher, because the number 13 we heard per bus before was really, really low and hard to work with. Just for the public and those that may not know, every time that bus hauls kids and unloads, it will have to stop and be sanitized. And so if we do double routes, we're going to have to come up with a method to sanitize the bus before it goes out again and still get kids to school on time. I know I heard that and I mentioned it somewhere that maybe we need to work jointly between our janitorial staff and the buses, because what people also need to know is those cleaning supplies cannot be carried on the bus by the Minnesota DOT. Those cleaning supplies are not allowed to be on the bus. They have to be brought to the bus when the kids are out of the bus and it's empty. So there's a lot more going into this yet before we're all done with all this. And I don't know what all the things are, but I just applaud how far this has come in a plan. At least it presents out to people what we're looking at. And I think there's time for a lot of public response yet. And I don't know where this is going to look this fall. I don't know. There's so many things going on in our country. We're seeing this case numbers increase most places, not too bad in Minnesota. But there's a lot of timeline. I got one question. Are we looking at a timeline yet of possibly moving things back 1 week on the start of the school year?
Yeah.
I'll quit here. Thank you.
Yeah. First of all, Arlen, thank you for your comments. The admin team has been working really hard on this. And I will say that you and others have given us a lot of suggestions along the way. And I think, for literally years in terms of things that we could and should do differently. And so, at least some of those thoughts are kind of coming forward with our proposal. The other thing I'm glad you mentioned is, it's not the perfect plan. There's a lot of stuff to do. Talking about neighborhood schools is definitely the right thing to do. And I think it's a popular thing to consider. But there are also disadvantages. For example, are we going to have a significantly different racial makeup between schools? And that's a big issue. How are we going to determine attendance boundaries for schools? And I can go on. And so a lot of the devil's in the details. In concept, I think it's really strong. But there will be people unhappy for a variety of reasons. And so I just want to remind everyone that, we didn't have a secret plan that we came up with a year ago to unveil now. This truly has been a response to a health crisis. So now I've kind of rambled on, and I think I forgot your actual question at the end there, Arlen. Could you remind me of that?
Yeah, my question was, are we looking at delaying the start of school 1 week? Because we've kind of moved it up a week ahead of Labor Day to give us more time to adapt to this. I want to make one other statement as long as I got the floor here. When I talk with people, a few of them, when they have healthy children, what I'm hearing is if there's a way for their kids to be in school, they want their kids in school. And that's logical, I think, for everybody. That social interaction is so necessary. Some people have gone as far to say even if their cases and everything else, they'd expose their kids. I don't quite agree with that necessarily, but I keep hearing if there's a way for our kids to be in school, we want them in school. So I'm glad we're working towards every effort we can to get there. Thank you.
Yeah, and the comment about the school calendar is something that administratively we're going to talk about this week. We think we can actually roll out the plan according to the current school calendar. One concern that was brought up is whether or not we should have more full weeks during the school year instead of having like a Friday off or a Monday off. And that's because, if we have grades 5 through 12 doing 2 days of in-person learning on Monday and Tuesday, And then on Thursday and Friday, they're doing distance learning, and the other cohort has the opposite schedule. Then by having 4-day weeks, it kind of complicates things in terms of how much time each cohort spends in the building. And so we're going to be talking about that this week, and we'll have a recommendation for you probably August 3rd.
All right, and then Heidi, you are next.
Well, I want to echo Arlen's comments about applauding the efforts of our staff. I know you must be working like crazy. You don't learn this in superintendent school or principal school, and here we are. So I think first I want to say I think we've landed on the right piece. I will accept neighborhood schools for this year as a response to circumstances. I do have concerns, which I've already shared with Karsten, about continuing that. But I think we've come up with some really smart solutions as far as limiting the movement of staff, limiting the movement of students. And it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be a 100% smooth. I acknowledge that too. And how we're changing learning styles and approaches. So I'm really, really impressed and proud with the product that's been brought forward so far here about how we're going to approach this in the structural sense. But Karsten, I do have, if you could comment on what specifically at the Jefferson site do we need to address? I mean, it's a building that's been closed. Now we're reopening it. What does the physical environment have? What do we have to do to boost that? Staffing, I've asked about what does leadership in that building look like once we've added a building. How are we doing meals at Jefferson? So the physical costs, staffing costs, we've gotten a donation for some technology. These are big numbers. So I'm assuming also that we will be burning down into or past our fund balance. Normally we include a 5% sort of reserve, but that's one of these situations where we want to spend that reserve so we can do the right thing by kids. So if you could just comment about kind of that work package and total cost approach at Jefferson. Thank you.
Sure. And I can give a brief intro to it. Jackie is available to talk about costs associated with the overall COVID response plan or reopening plan. So maybe I'll wait on the details for her, but I can at least give a quick summary. In terms of physical costs, it would be about we estimate it's about $20,000 worth of work between last week and the beginning of the school year. Because of concerns about timelines, we did authorize some, real simple work in the building. So for example, we spent $1,300 on a new hot water heater. We're addressing some plaster issues in some of the classrooms. We'll stretch some carpet, where needed. Overall though, the building's in really good shape, which I think is a testimony to our custodial staff that kept it up to date for many years. So we estimate about $20,000 in physical costs. That may go up or down, as we go on. In terms of staff, and Jackie will give an overview of this, we will need some sort of administrative support there. And one option would be to hire a dean of students in order to be physically present at Jefferson. Perhaps this person could also be our district assessment coordinator if we have district assessments this year. And then if we move grade 7 to the high school to make it a 7 through 12 building, then the request would be to consider an assistant principal instead of a dean. And I say that there's been, I think, some discussion and some frustration because we didn't approve the dean of students at the high school during the first round of HR, And then at a later meeting, we talked about, coming up with some options. Hopefully that would be cost neutral. And then all of a sudden we're talking about maybe an assistant principal instead of a dean. So I'm sorry that it's kind of gone through multiple iterations. Again, we haven't, it's not a firm recommendation yet. We realize there's a cost impact that we have to figure out, for those things. But I just want to lay that on the table. In terms of nursing support, we really do not need a full-time building nurse at Jefferson. However, we may want to consider a backup nurse for the district in case one of our district nurses isn't available. And so, again, that'll be part of Jackie's financial considerations. And by the way, all these are up in the air. We'll have what we think is appropriate, but we respect the role of the board, and we know that all of us, administrators and board members and everybody else, has to calculate these fiscal considerations when making decisions. So probably a bigger issue related to Jefferson in terms of staff would be who goes where from the elementary schools and middle school if we do the neighborhood school model. And so we'll work with the teachers union, the support personnel union to at least explain our thinking there so we can make some good but quick decisions if we move forward. In terms of meals, we would set up an arrangement so that the meals would be prepared most likely at the high school, but it could be another site too, and then transported over to Jefferson. In order to make the in-class meals work, we think that it's going to be mostly non-heated food that would be issued out in classrooms. It's certainly not what Brent Lexfold wants to do because I think he's really good at providing great meal options for kids. But in such circumstances, I think we need to just make sure we get the meals served into classrooms. As far as costs overall, Jackie will go over that in a few minutes. And I hope I got your questions answered, but if I missed something, feel free to jump back and ask me again.
Yeah, I wanted the board and obviously the public to have a better scope of, all the work that we're doing and kind of assessing, and then things that have been thought of, but we haven't made decisions on yet too. Because I think, I think most of us have had a physical tour of Jefferson and seen kind of the activity that's going on there. But I just wanted to kind of flesh that out publicly about all of the things we're doing and all the things we have to think about, like the staffing and who's doing what and where the meal's coming from, because I didn't anticipate the kitchen was going to be revamped or whatever. So,
right.
So thank you. That helps. And I do look forward to more information about the transportation piece and the costs that I'd like us to be, to get to some rough numbers about just what it takes for this district to turn this into a student safety centered approach about what we're doing for this health pandemic crisis. So thank you.
So I am next up. Couple things. One is, say in the middle of the year, we get a vaccine, everything's fine, we can go back to school as normal. Would you anticipate that this would be a full year plan? We're not going to change it halfway through, right?
Yeah, we purposely are proposing structural changes for the entire school year. That enables us, we want to make sure each plan works with the structure that we're proposing so we can, relatively seamlessly go from one scenario to another. The state is giving us 24 hours to make a change from one scenario to another scenario. When the first guidance came out, it was 12 hours. So they gave us an extra 12 hours, but it's going to be quick when we have to make decisions. We don't want to be moving a grade from one class or one school to another. We don't want to be shuffling teachers during the year. We don't want to change our transportation system mid-year, and then maybe 2 months later there's a problem and we have to change it back, those kinds of things. So everything is assuming that it's for a full year.
Thank you. And then my other question is, what will special education look like? And in particular, especially this came up when we were touring Jefferson. There's a lot of smaller places in that building for itinerant staff to meet with students who have IEPs. But, how is that itinerant staff, going to work and look like with those assignments? Because I know we have to have that out by what date? Their assignments, is it August 1st?
August 1st. Of course, we may need to issue preliminary assignments and then updated ones just because of the circumstances. Yeah, and Sherry and Sonia are really taking the lead as far as special education assignments and how many case managers we need at each site and what kind of work they're going to be doing. That's a big issue because everything's going to be different, and including special education services. So we need to provide the right level of service, but it's going to look different. And I don't know if Sherry or Sonia are on the call right now. I'd feel much better if they were and could jump in. But maybe I'll keep talking unless I hear one of them speak up. And it's not just special education teaching that would look different, but let's look at third grade at Burnside. We'd have a class of 24 kids, let's say. We'd split into two, so 12 in each section. A teacher in one of the classes will have a laptop and a headset, and will be communicating information not only to his or her own class in that room, but also to an adjoining room with the other half of the class. We want that video and audio to be broadcast to people at home who might be quarantined, or maybe they're just sick with, or aren't able to attend school because of a broken arm or whatever reason, they're at home. And so we want that communication to be going out real time to the other classroom and the kids at home. So today we had a test run with some headsets and some technology. And, because of that, Meg Lahammer set up the pilot. And because of that, we have some changes as far as what equipment we need for that work to be done. But that's an example of the general ed setting. Special ed will be the same way. There'll be a lot of distance work completed distance, but also some in person. We may have special ed teachers and or paras and or general ed paras in the second classroom for a particular teacher because we need adult supervision. But when that's happening, then a special ed teacher or para can still be providing the service according to IEP requirements. So it's not going to be easy, but Sherry did indicate that we will make it work and that we'll consider different ways of providing those services.
Kirsten, this is Sherry. Thank you. I think that was a great explanation. We are really looking at our students that have a minimal service. We're going to be pushing them in, so they'll be with their regular ed peers more, and we will be pushing services and such into them. As far as our itinerant staff, one of the considerations is the sheer number of students that itinerant staff, and that's our speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, the sheer number they meet with. If there was an exposure, it would possibly impact a great number of people. So we're looking at virtual methods within the building to do that and just problem solve so that we can make sure we keep our students safe and our staff safe. So thank you for the question. And once we understand from transportation, if we go ahead with this plan, which building students will be in, we will be able to finalize staff placements and work with staff to make sure that our students are covered.
Thank you, Sherry. Other questions that anybody has? Mike?
Yeah, I was wondering if there's other staff involved in these plans other than just administration, and if we're getting buy-in from that side as well, because these are big changes, big issues, and I know a lot of people feel at home in one place and not another. My sister's here visiting today, and she's listening to her school board meeting right now, and they're in Elgin, Illinois, and they're deciding to do the first quarter is going to be all distance learning, and then they'll see what happens in the population. It's even, well, it's as uncertain as anything else, but I think it's important that there's that other staff members, that are teachers and janitors, and as well as EAs, everybody is getting at least some input into this plan, and so that's what I'd like to hear about.
Yeah, and that's a great question, because we need, the whole school community to be providing feedback. Administratively, we were talking about these potential structural changes just to see if they were possible. And so we did not actively solicit feedback at that time because we knew that, out of 10 options we were looking at, that most of them would not work, for whatever reason. So we kind of focus mostly internally. Of course, we have Brent Lexfold for food service and Alan Gaylor for custodians. And, we had leaders of those programs. Just recently, though, we did have a virtual meeting with the support personnel group representative, Lori Mitchell, and then also Kirby Hansen representing Education Minnesota. Others were invited too, but it didn't work out with their schedule. And we shared the plan, and we started getting feedback from those employee groups at that time. And so we'll really go into gear as far as getting more feedback about some important issues. And even today's with, the technology test of equipment, one of the high school teachers had a great idea in terms of staffing that we'll at least consider. And so in the end, if we get feedback from, all sorts of people, it's going to be a better plan. Oh, and if I could, I know Mike didn't really ask a question, but brought up his sister's experience with a school in Illinois, and that they're going first quarter distance learning. One thing that we'll be hearing from the governor soon is how will these decisions be made? And I think that's a critical part in all this. Is it the governor who's going to decide for the entire state? Is it local county health officials, public health officials, who will be deciding on behalf of member school districts? Is it the school board? Exactly who's going to make that decision. We were tasked with coming up with plans for each of the scenarios. What would it look like? And then, of course, we'll have to adjust those plans after we get the additional guidance. So the decision may not be ours as far as how we start the year or continue the year. It might be addressed by other people. We'll have to wait and see what the governor says.
And I know as part of getting feedback, we wanted to have those listening sessions with families that could call in, and there was some technical difficulties. If I recall, I did call in myself, and I know that there were a lot of people that were struggling in getting in. So that was part of getting feedback from families. The survey was the other part of getting feedback from some families about where their comfort levels lie. Maybe now would be a good time to address the survey.
Sure. Yeah, and there were 3 ways that we solicited feedback from parents. One is, as you said, the call-in, and we only had 1 or 2 people. There were others who came in much later after the start time. Heard tonight that there were some others who wanted to give feedback but couldn't log in. But we did attempt to do that virtually. In addition to that, we did invite dozens of staff members and community members to in-person feedback sessions. And those were pretty well attended. I felt really good about the comments made by participants and kind of the overall list of feedback suggestions. I went from room to room, first to thank people for participating and just to hear a little bit of the conversation. I didn't make all the rooms, but I made most of them. And even if I was just in there for 10 minutes, there was a good idea presented by somebody in the room. So that was, the second leg of our feedback from parents. And the third one is from the survey that was sent out at the end of June. And what happened, and by the way, the next time we give out a survey, we can and should do some things differently. Not that we did anything necessarily wrong, but I think we can do better. What we could do, so anyway, the survey was district specific, and we're asking for feedback about a variety of questions. And then, i3 Works, which is a company that does a lot of data analysis with Every Hand Joined and with the school district, extracted that data to come up with these summary reports. And we did break it down by, some labels or categories of students. And of course, as soon as you say labels or categories, that should raise a red flag. Because, really feedback is individualized. There's no one person represents, Hispanic people. No one person represents the needs of all special education students or parents, those kinds of things. And certainly a survey doesn't represent the full picture. But we viewed it as a way to, collect some feedback to see if there's some trends that we need to consider as we do the ongoing planning. We did not have a proposal in place when we sent that out. And so now we're at the point where we have that proposal, and I'm sure we'll hear lots of feedback from, all sorts of people. And that's good. We want to hear from all voices in our society or in our community. So that's kind of where we are now. I don't know if I glossed over that survey issue too quickly, but I will say that we'll do some things differently, and we're going to work with the policy committee to kind of review how we survey parents, how we collect data, and how we kind of let people know in advance, what's going to happen with that data. I will say that nothing was, we didn't share the results from any one person, to the public. That's not this at all. It's just a question of how we kind of connected our demographic data with, survey respondent data.
Thank you for addressing that. Holly, you've been in the queue.
Yeah, we had a long conversation in our policy meeting regarding this exact survey and how the data was gathered in order to connect names with families' demographics. My concern with the survey, Karsten, and I've addressed this with you already, but the question was never asked, because you're a parent of a child with special needs, does that mean you want hybrid learning? Does that mean you're more or less likely to fill out a survey? That's not necessarily even real information. It was an overgeneralized few slides where we put people in categories that are unacceptable. And so you just mentioned now, did I kind of go over it? You did. However, I haven't heard you accept responsibility for the misconnection. And
yeah.
That's the part I want to hear. And I have more to say on that, but I'll let other people take a turn. But that's huge. That's what we're talking about all around the country right now. Oh, I didn't mean to. Well, actually, you didn't mean not to.
Yeah, as far as categorizing groups of kids, or what do you mean by what's going on across the country?
What's going on across the country has been going on is how we overgeneralize and make connections that we didn't set up to make. So the fact that these subgroups or groups are less likely to fill out a survey because they're parents of special ed or because they happen to be parents of children of color, that question wasn't asked. So to make that general statement that these groups were less likely to fill out, I don't even understand what that means.
Yeah, and
how would we even know that that's, I don't understand any of that.
yeah, and I I probably wasn't very clear with my initial response, but really every person's or every individual's experience is unique to that person. And as a society, as a school district, sometimes we label or categorize people, and and that's not fair to the individual, who wants to provide that information. So I do agree with you that I think as a society we tend to overgeneralize or over categorize people into categories as if all people of a certain subgroup feel the same way. But the intent of this survey was just to make sure that white middle class people only. We didn't want that group to sway the results for the entire school district or community. That was the thinking of, as far as breaking it up into at least looking at what multiple groups in general felt about something.
Yeah, there were a lot of ways to say that without writing it how it was written.
Right. Yeah, and it's also I don't remember the numbers for sure, but if let's say 40% of a particular group didn't fill out a survey, which may have been less than another group, really, the wording could be, in my mind, that means the school district didn't reach out to 60% of that group. And that's the problem with the school district, not with members of that particular group. That's how I kind of view it. But if I was reading, if I didn't have that belief in me and I saw, kind of the summary slides, then I'm not surprised that they would react like that. And I think you're expressing kind of some of those reactions, and I totally get that. I think it's a point well taken.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and I'm responsible for everything that happens in the district, and I take that responsibility not only with the survey or the survey results, but with other things as well. So I do take that responsibility.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kristen. I really appreciate that explanation too. Jim's in the queue.
Thank you. Yeah, I put my name in there because I was kind of waiting for that last 15 seconds where you accepted responsibility for it or pointed out responsibility for it. I guess my question, kind of more comment, is on the survey. Is I think I'm looking at it right. I think we're here to educate children. Doesn't matter what they look like, where they're from, what their income is, what their gender is. We're here to educate any and all children. So why do we have a survey that we have to separate people, put them against each other, so to speak? As you said, you didn't want the white people to be overseeing the survey. Our idea is to find out what we can do what the parents see and thinking, and the public, as to how we want to educate children. Am I missing something here on that, or am I think we're here I think everybody has the same goal, is to get their child the best education as possible, no matter what.
Yeah, and I've heard that from directly from one or two others, with that same sentiment. and probably indirectly just with a lot of different feedback. They just phrased it differently or had different points of emphasis. Clearly, well, our mission statement says it. We have a lot of documents that
Right.
we are here to educate and inspire all kids.
Exactly.
And so, the ultimate goal, I think, would be for us to personalize, education and address individual needs for everyone in our district. So, I think, when we asked the survey questions, we did differentiate, some of the information by ethnicity, special education status. And, the thinking there is that, we want to make sure that people in all groups, have their voice heard. And so, the survey is just one small, albeit flawed, way of collecting information. The last thing I would suggest would be to take one survey or to give one survey and then make all decisions based on that. We would be doing an injustice to everyone. At the same time, some of the survey results, at least the summary data, kind of told me that Alyssa Johnsrud is right. We didn't translate it or find the right ways to get feedback from parents who may not speak English. What can we do differently to make sure that we hear their voice? And that came out loud and clear, when I looked at that summary data in terms of response rate. We have some other data, that shows, that according to the survey, and again, it's flawed, but, some students would prefer learning via distance learning instead of being in school. So once again, that looks at me and, everyone in the school district and say, why doesn't everyone want to be in school every day? That's how I read that. I don't think, I think it's an honest question as far as, what we need to do internally to make sure that we're a safe and welcoming environment for everyone. Now, with that being said, there are just some people who love distance learning. They might want to sleep in the morning, but they will work twice as hard as anybody else from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. That was probably me in high school and college. And so some people just gel, with that particular kind of learning. But at the same time, we need to ask some honest questions to people about, is that an area of concern for us? What else can we do so that every child wants to be here every day, excited to learn? Sorry for going off.
No, that's okay. I'll just go on. Let's be realistic. That's why everybody has an opinion, because if everybody thought alike, everything would be very complacent. So It's great to have people their idea. So nobody's going to ever agree. Neither is this board going to ever agree on every one thing. The other thing is, I think, be careful when you're saying take more surveys. After a while, people just say, I'm not going to take a survey. I've already taken several. I'm not going to take any more. So when you do a survey, you got to make sure it's the right survey. Get the right information directed to the right people at the right time in a manner that they can understand, read, and interpret, and get back to you in a timely manner. So,
yeah, I completely agree with that because I think we're inundated with documents and emails, surveys, it goes on and on all the time. And this isn't just Red Wing Public Schools or Red Wing, it's just all the time. And then, I'm kind of in that boat. I get so many surveys from different people that you don't start filling them out. So in this case, we actually had a really good response rate, considering, the short turnaround time and how we, ask people to fill it out. But you're right. We don't want to do that all the time. I will say kind of on a related issue, one of the pieces of feedback that I learned from the group session when we invited the dozens of community members and staff members in for the meeting, they gave feedback. One of the things that was loud and clear is that they thought they had too much information in March and April as far as our planning for COVID, because it was just constant all the time. And, you know, the language that I use in those communications are, you know, they're set to Karsten style, and maybe that style doesn't reach everyone in the community. And so I think we need to look at how that communication happens. So it's not just the surveys, it's also just how we communicate with people throughout the community.
That's a really good point. Thank you, Karsten. Let's take 2 more comments, Janie and then Heidi, and then let's move on and talk about what are our next steps from here. So go ahead, Janie.
Yep, I'll keep it quick on the survey. I guess, you know, I just kind of want to say that I think it is great whenever we try different ways of reaching people. So I think what I'm hearing from your explanation, Karsten, is that the intention was good to get all voices and such. I think I just wanted to give my perspective of that. I just didn't think that we had ever seen data as a school board or even as community members or parents like emailed out in this form. And I think that's what was so kind of uncomfortable or shocking about it. You know, I kind of had linked it to kind of how we get MCA results. And even compared to that, it just was worded very differently. So I guess I'm hearing that this was an outside entity and a new way that we did this. Is that correct, Karsten? And just to end, I'm very happy to hear that we've learned something from this and that, you know, going forward, we're going to maybe have some different things we do. So, but maybe if you can answer that question about, again, this was an outside entity or not that actually conducted this. So.
Yeah, the, you know, i3 Works, you know, extracted the data and summarized the reports, but you know, the school district owns it. I mean, you know, so I don't want to blame i3 Works for, you know, the verbiage or the graphs or the content or anything like that. I mean, that's, you know, I'll take responsibility for that, you know, or the school district will take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
But, you know, the attempt or thinking was, you know, let's take an extra step. Let's dig into it a little bit deeper to see if there are some things we should do differently, you know, to meet the needs of our kids. So clearly it was well-intentioned, but based on the, you know, we have to learn from our mistakes or from the way we do things and the way we, you know, the feedback that we get. And so, you know, we'll handle some things differently next time. And it could be something as very as simple as, you know, when a parent fills out a survey, we will, you know, really clearly explain what we're going to do with the survey results and how we will report those surveys out or the results out to people. The other thing would be, you know, we may want to consider having the data demographic sharing as an opt-in. Instead of us trying to save people time by doing it, you know, on the back end. When the state did their statewide survey, because they also did a fall reopening survey to the whole state. They had over 100,000 responses. When they did that, you know, they asked parents to, you know, identify their ethnicity, but they also had the choice of just not sharing that information as part of the survey. So that would be something that, you know, we could incorporate into any future surveys if we so choose to have those parent surveys. Another suggestion that was made at the policy committee meeting just earlier today is, you know, what if we have surveys reviewed by that committee or by a group, you know, of people just to ask those questions in advance before we send it out to parents or others. And I think those are really good suggestions that we could, you know, consider implementing in a policy or handbook or something like that. So anyway, those are just some of the things that we've been talking about, you know, over the last couple of days.
Thank you. And then Heidi.
You know, I know some people were surprised by the data breakdown by ethnicity or other characteristics. Actually, I think we need to be doing more of that because we need to understand that different community groups see things differently. And I'm talking about a wide diversity of experience. So we could have a significant amount of parents say, hey, I'd like to do away with testing. But we have another group that says, no, I like the testing because that's the accountability piece for the district when it comes to MCAs. I want to know where my children are compared to the white cohort. And so I think we're on to something here. I think definitely we need to do it better. But I do think we should be discussing this. And I think this is something that this board and this community, frankly, have struggled to kind of put our arms around diversity in very large ways. So we look at our board, we're all pretty much white middle class folks. But we have a responsibility to understand or try to understand or reach out to those who have experiences different than what we have. All right. So, and believe it or not, I was a low income kid at a private liberal arts college, and they had a lot to learn from the daughter of the local garbage man. And I had a lot to learn from folks that had way different income levels than I did. And it afforded them a way different life experience than I lived. So that's the kind of diversity I want us all to just be open to and welcome. So I think this is a first step. I think we need to do it better. Obviously, we had a great discussion at policy committee. I know there's concerns out there. I have no doubt we're going to work on that and address it. But frankly, I think we need to say, here we are, and then let's continue. Let's move on. So thank you.
Well said, Heidi. Thank you. All right. So from here, Superintendent Anderson, what are our next steps and what needs to happen?
Well, let's see. It's almost 8 o'clock. We do have, maybe I'll answer your question and just let you know, we do have Jess Whitcomb that can provide some additional information about the return to school plan, or we could wait until next time to kind of go over that. For sure, what we want to do is have Jackie get on the call here and talk about the money that we're expecting to spend on some of these potential changes. So after that, what I'm kind of hoping is, we don't need a vote. In fact, we should not take a vote tonight because it's just a presentation. That's how I listed it in the board packet. But if there's a major red flag, like, Karsten, there is no way we should have K through 6 at Sunnyside School. If there's that feeling or that sentiment, then I'd really like to know now, because that will force us to look at some other options or variations, or just come out and say, sorry, it doesn't work that way. So it'd be nice to hear some of those comments now. Fully realizing that, a lot can happen over the next week or two. And so suddenly the questions will come up then, instead of right now. So, but I'm getting a sense from the board that, at least reluctantly, it's something that we should pursue, kind of the current plan of attack in terms of structure, grade configurations, teaching, offering K through 4 education every day, and those kinds of things. But now would be a great time to hear any dissenting of views. And then after that, I'll just kind of wrap that up. Then I think Pam, Arlen, and I had talked about perhaps coming back in later July after the governor provides the additional guidance to finalize the plan. And so, we aren't ready to do that. We don't know what the governor is going to say for sure. And, we'll need some time to digest what he does say. But then it may need a special meeting before our meeting on August 3rd.
And we want, in thinking about that, we also want to give our educators and staff enough time that if they are the person that needs to move a building, that they have enough time and enough support to be able to do that. So we don't want to be springing that on anybody at the last minute. So we want to, as a board, make a decision sooner rather than later, after the governor comes out with his recommendations too. So tonight is a lot of information to digest. We'll be able to think about it some more, talk about it some more. We're not acting on any of this, but if we do have some recommendations or thoughts, now would be a good time to share them, so that when we do come back, we can act sooner rather than later to give our staff and educators enough time to make those changes. Jeannie, you have your name in the queue.
Thank you. I am not dissenting at all, but I just have a question that probably has been in a lot of others' minds and parents is just, I'm not going to get into detailed questions because I have a lot of those too, but can you talk about how we're going to fit 7 through 12 in the high school? Because I've been getting lots of questions about that.
Yeah, George and Jay have been all over that. We do have some pretty significantly sized rooms, like the old teacher prep area is really the equivalent of 2 classrooms. We have some computer labs that will not be needed because we'll have one-to-one technology that will be used. If we need to, we can add some temporary partitions in the pod areas. That would be the size of a classroom. And so that'd be 4 classrooms right there because we have 4 common areas in pods. And so those are the basic ways that we would provide enough space for 7th grade to be in the high school.
Perfect, thanks.
I will tell you that, right now the plan is a K-6 at Twin Bluff. A variation of that could be keeping 7th grade at Twin Bluff. So it could be a K through 7 school. We're at least exploring that, just because if we did that, we'd have more kids who could walk to the middle school. That helps our overall transportation plan. So we're at least looking for that. So that could be a variation that we present. There's some negatives though to it, because then we'd have several staff members who'd be at the middle school and then also the high school on a given day. And we kind of want to not have that as much as possible.
Madam Chair, I'm not in the queue, so I don't want to speed along. But I think it's spelled out on cohort 1 and B and cohort B, basically six grades, half of them. So 7 through 9, 10 through 12, one day. So you got basically 60% of the kids that normally in the school, or 40, however you want to do it, go 50, than you normally have. So that would help alleviate or spread out that so-called group, if that is the way we go.
Yeah, if we have hybrid learning at the high school, the transportation solved for the exact reason that Jim mentioned, because we wouldn't have all the high school kids there every day, and so that alleviates the transportation problem. We'd still have a transportation problem if we're bringing in all grades 5 through 12 every day. That's where we're trying to come up with a transportation plan that will also work under any scenario.
Would now be a good time to turn it over to Jess or Jackie?
Jess, are you available to give a recap of some of the additional work that you've done?
I can. I feel like Karsten hit just about everything as you go through, and you guys have in front of you kind of the plan and the proposed in draft form. I think some of the things that we wanted to make sure is just out of all of the feedback sessions, and I think one of the things that has been really nice is that our community feels comfortable in emailing and calling and giving feedback throughout this whole process. So that's been really nice to see. I think that one of the things that we really have been doing is taking all of that into account whenever we're making decisions. And so some of that, like slide 5, I think what you guys have in front of you, was like, what did we learn loud and clear from all of those feedback sessions? And some of those things are our why we're doing all of this. And our community said loud and clear, like, make sure that staff, family, and student support are at your number one. Make sure that there's more social emotional support, more mental health support, and all of that is always in our mind as we keep going. More live interactions with students and teachers, consistent expectations, focus on the little people first, consider project-based learning, do some how-to nights for families. So as we do our whole plan, we always go back to these things and say, like, what did the community say to us? And let's build that in, even if something else, we might have come up with something else first and thought, nope, what's the community saying to us? And some of those other things that we always had as our guiding principles too, is like the health and safety, equity, essential student learning, student, family, and staff support, and then just that, like, patience, flexibility, and empathy. We're all in a situation that we've never been in before, and I have really found that community has been really flexible and patient with us and given us a lot of empathy in how we've been doing things. So we want to put a really great product on for them coming up in the fall. So some of the things, I think that Karsten touched on just about everything. There were a couple other things with health and safety that I know he'll want to go over later. But some of those things are about sanitizing and supervision in the hallway and how we kind of do our sanitizing to make sure that we do those high touch areas, the lockers and the locker rooms not being utilized, so that we can kind of just make sure that we can track where kids go, so that our hope is that if something were to happen, that we would know enough information to not have to close the whole school district, but that we would know how to mitigate some of that risk. So those are some of the things that we talked about, but other than, unless you guys have questions for me, I do feel like Karsten hit a lot of the talking points within there.
Thank you.
What? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Heidi. I was just going to ask for questions.
Okay. So Jess, I understand there was a question about transportation. Do you have any more data to shed on that? Because that didn't show up in the document we received.
Mm-hmm. So that was actually some information that i3Works gave us an expanded data this morning with the administrative team. I can pull that plan up. Karsten, are you fine with that?
I think so.
Or do you want that at a different meeting, or you're good with pulling that up now?
Actually, maybe could you just quickly summarize it verbally, and then if we need more time later, we can do that at a subsequent meeting or operations committee.
Sure. So some of it is that I would say the general overview is the fact that going to neighborhood schools is helpful in our transportation issue. I would say that's like the number one finding that they gave us back is like our current model. We would have to bus about 50% of the kids. If we go to a neighborhood school, we're going to have to bus about 32%. So it helps. And so that's what we were looking for is like, are we doing all of this mix up for no reason, or is this going to actually help us do something? And so that was something we really wanted to be clear on, and that's some of the work that we're asking the transportation committee to do. The administrators asked a lot of good questions this morning to say like, well, I need to know if this section will be here or there. Can we look at how we're meeting needs of families best, and how do we make sure that we're looking at neighborhood schools as families as well. So there were some great questions this morning, but overall, I think we found that moving and messing with everybody's schedule, it will be helpful for our transportation issues.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for Jess? Okay, seeing none at this moment. Thank you so much. I think that's really helpful to hear your perspective, Jess, and to know about the transportation piece in general. That obviously we want to put our best product out there, and our job is to educate our kids and to give them the best possible education possible. And we know that that's in-person learning. And so I'm in full support of whatever we need to do to get kids back going. So thank you. Karsten, is now a good time to have Jackie join us
Right.
about.
I think so.
Hello. So I, just because numbers are easier to present when you can see them versus me reading them, I am going to bring my screen up. And just know that these are the numbers as of today. As we get farther along in the plan, these numbers have been changing daily, weekly, as we get more refined. So I'm just going to kind of run through the list on what we've determined. The things in yellow for now are estimated numbers, ballparks, as we start going out to vendors to look to see what this actually could cost. So we are looking at support staff. We're looking at 2 of them, secretary and an LPN for Jefferson. We may need to add room monitors yet. We are still determining that. So what I mean by a room monitor is when Karsten talked about we have the teacher in one room and another adult in the second room. We think right now we have enough adults, but we need to verify that all the adults can return to school or are comfortable returning to school. So there might be some extra support there. We will need some additional custodians. We'll need 1 full-time for Jefferson and 3 for extra cleaning, not only because of COVID, but because of lunch in the classroom. We'll mean deeper cleaning in each of the classrooms every night.
Jackie, can you make this bigger? Am I the only one that sees
I can
small
try.
numbers? I can't even read the words over on the left side, so I'm wearing glasses.
Sorry about that. Is that better?
No, there you go. That's better.
That's better. Okay. We may need additional food service staff. We don't know the direction we need to go with serving lunches yet, other than it will be on the school nutrition program versus the summer lunch program we've been doing. We're not sure if we still need to, if we're in a hybrid model, if we'll need to provide the summer lunches or some variation of it to the kids who are in the distance learning model. That is still an unknown. For additional licensed staff, we're looking at a dean at Jefferson. As you can see, there's a range there of 0 to 85,000. It depends on if we hire an internal candidate, and if we think, if it is an internal candidate, if it is a position we could do without for a year while we're in this learning model. Additional administration, Karsten talked a little bit about an additional AP or dean at the high school because of the extra grade. Again, ranging from 0 to 150,000 depending on who is hired and if the internal candidate is hired, if we need to replace their position in the learning model we're in. For food service to be in the classroom, we're going to need some cold, hot thermal bags to make sure that the milk stay cold and anything that needs to stay cold while it's being transported can do that. And so don't have any food safety issues. We're going to need a few carts to wheel it around the school. We're also going to need some carts for the elementary specialists, bringing them into the classroom versus the class traveling to their classroom. As Karsten mentioned earlier in the meeting, we did have some donors step up to help provide the technology hardware that we need to get Jefferson up and running. We did move ahead with our plan. The high school staff were not due to get laptops until, I'd say, either next year or the following year. We did move that up just to aid in this distance learning model in case they need to teach from school or just to be versatile in their areas. We may need some potential digital curriculum that you can see is to be determined, and there's a vendor that the Ed District the 6 districts in the ed districts have determined to use is Edgenuity. I think I'm saying that right, but it's a per seat basis, so we don't know how many seats we'll need for those students who may decide to do distance learning all year. We may need some repairs we're looking at repairs to Jefferson in the $20,000 range. We're thinking we're going to need some room dividers at the high school, but we don't know how many yet. About $15,000 in estimated moving costs to move everybody around. Utilities and custodial supplies for Jefferson. I looked at the last couple years GCED was in that building. We were running about $40,000 a year. And so we'll need, I inflated it a little bit, and then GCED was buying their own custodial supplies like toilet paper and paper towels, things like that. So I added some in for that as well. If we need to add bus routes, if we can find buses, which is the difficult thing right now, they're about $60,500 a route. I don't have any costs in there yet because we know the scenario we learned about this morning, we'd need 6. But talking to Terry Johnson, there's no buses to be bought, leased, or anything in the state right now. At Jefferson, we're going to need some coolers and some shelves and some other things just to have, just to serve food there. So things like milk coolers, things like that, we like to have on site instead of moving them every day. Excuse me. This is Brent's number on updating the computers for the food service program if we're on what he calls a free reduced pay program, which is the school nutrition program. We may need to go to a system that would allow us to order, have the families pre-order lunches. That's still a to be determined, just so we get the right counts to the right rooms. That's another estimated cost right now. PPE for staff and students, we've already spent about $40,000. Hilliard, one of our vendors, has come out with an estimating tool. So I'm waiting for Shonda and Alan to run our counts through that estimating tool to get a better number there. We were very lucky we have a carpenter on staff in our custodial department. He is making the plexiglass for the reception desks, which is a great savings for us. I've seen other districts who are paying, $300 to $1,000 for each of these. And we're getting them for the materials costs. So that's a good deal there. The hotspots, we are already into a year of service. That's a cost we're going to have no matter what model we're in. So about $44,000 there. The annual cost of our Chromebook lease is about $95,000. Again, we fast forwarded that. And again, the sanitation supplies, we're looking at about an estimate of $40,000. And again, I'm waiting for Shonda and Alan to run the numbers through the Hilliard model to get me a better projection there. Some other non-monetary considerations is this would require a total overhaul of the staff and students in Synergy, moving them to various buildings they are not currently assigned to. We'd have to move all the students and staff to the correct buildings in PayPams, which is our lunch software. Moving staff to the correct buildings in our finance software and SMART. We have to redo badge access for everyone to they're in the correct buildings. I'm not sure if there's a badge access swipe panel at Jefferson. There's not a secure entry at Jefferson like in our other buildings. We have to reset up Jefferson as a site with MDE. We have to set up UFARS codes in SMART. Jefferson has never existed other than on the utility end in SMART since we made the transition. Right now, we don't have to do the Title I comparability report because it compares the same grade at different buildings. And we haven't had that in the grade they're comparing, which I believe is 3rd grade. That was all at Burnside. We'll have to do that for this upcoming year. We may need to delay or redo the teacher notices of assignment, which are due to go out by August 1st. Because we don't know yet where staff will be assigned. And then the other question we haven't answered is where will Kids Junction be and how many sites? When you get down to the bottom right now, I'm around $875,000 in costs. We've either estimated or identified. Questions?
Go ahead, Holly.
I have a question. What are the expenses right now for Kids Junction and for the community things? Oh goodness, somebody's dog. And for the community things that we're providing, I think I wanted my update from Community Ed. I think we've got like over 700 kids in activities right now. So what are the expenses that we're looking at for how much that has cost us, and in relation to how much more this is going to cost us? Like that money that's coming out of Community Ed, are all their reserves gone from everything they've spent all summer?
We are still analyzing that. The last time I looked at Kids Junction, just in supply cost alone, I mean, we're $10,000 at least there in supplies we've had to buy. And that is included in my sanitation supplies number there. But I would need to check with Dawn to see how many extra staff she's had to hire to keep social distancing, things like that.
Right, because that's an effective model, I think, that we've been pretty successful with in terms of, how we've done things. However, I know it's been very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So as we look at, opening Jefferson and switching kids, and you telling me right now we can't even get a bus. Like even if we ordered a bus, there's no bus, is pretty telling about the state of affairs that we're in Minnesota. So yeah, it just triggered off the top of my head. I know we're serving like over 700 kids in Community Ed and all of the expenses that goes with it. So thanks, Jackie. That's a very thorough report.
Yeah, and if I could just add in there that, like Holly was saying, to be fair, we're going to have some of those costs regardless. And if we don't offer K-4 everyday learning, we'll likely provide childcare for emergency workers anyway. So there'd be, you have to kind of compare, those costs. And yeah, as far as the buses, and we've known this, every school district practically throughout the country is having busing issues. It's not just Red Wing. There are some larger districts who are not even planning for transportation yet because they're waiting for the governor to just make the announcement, because they know it's not possible to make the transportation changes needed to get everybody in school. So, we're not alone, every school. So right now the transportation projections would show that to get 25 to 30 per bus, we need 6 extra buses. That's not an option. And so, we'll have to inform our choices based on that.
Jim, you're in the queue.
Come on. There we go. Now I'm live. Thank you, Madam Chair. I realize some of these costs, because right now we have 50 to 70,000 annually in the budget for Jefferson School, and we can get into the willingness to sell the building and now not. But I'm thank goodness I was sitting down when you flashed that $875,000 number there, because that's outrageous. We're having less kids projected because our enrollment is declining, but we got to come up with nearly another $1 million to open up another building. No way. We got to come up with another way. That's not acceptable to the people of Red Wing, the Red Wing School District, to absorb another $1 million out of reserves or whatever to fund a building with our declining enrollment. We didn't even address that down the road, which we need to. And so I'm for one saying Jefferson's sounds like a great idea, but not at nearly $250,000.
No, Jim, that's wrong.
What's wrong? I mean, I can use Jefferson School. We haven't decided that yet. For one thing, no. $875,000, and we don't even know all the other costs yet. She just said. So What, the
No.
numbers aren't telling me the truth?
Jim, you know, the 875 isn't to just open Jefferson. That's one
Correct.
small price of that. So I think you're exaggerating the cost for opening Jefferson. If you look through that list, we are going to do that regardless of whether or not we open Jefferson.
875,000, no matter what, if we do Jefferson. I think we're doing it, we're adding, because let's just say we don't have Jefferson. What is the actual cost then? Why don't we have that?
And Jackie can look through that list again to see what the delta is between keeping Jefferson and not using it.
So,
She'll call it up on the screen here.
all right, I'll save my comment. Thank you.
And I think one of the things that we need to be mindful of, there were two different positions that were a part of that 875, if I remember correctly, that was 0 to whatever, 0 to 85,000 or whatever. And so as I understood that chart, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understood that chart, you put in the highest amount in there as your highest total, Jackie, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, so there's a possibility that if we moved people internally, perhaps to a teacher on special assignment for this year, there would be no cost to, like that number 8, that line on number 8 is 0 to 150. So you put the 150 in there as the highest scenario. Line number 7 is 85,000. That is the highest scenario, because there is a possibility of doing that cost neutrally. Like you said, if we don't need a person in that position because school year is very different, I would encourage us to really go to the 0 part and not the 85,000 part. And I think that's what I'm hearing loud and clear from Jim too. I mean, at those 85 and 150, we need to figure out how to move some folks around in our district who can fill those spots.
And if you go by that cohort 1 and A and B, the high school is going to see approximately 60% of what they currently have on a daily basis. But we want to add people. So I'm not sold yet on what you're trying to do here.
Yeah, and by the way, Jim, I hope you know that we need to talk about these things. And
Right.
one of the my points is that we didn't want to go out and hire people because we don't even know the scenario we're going to be facing. And you know, clearly, if it's distance learning for the whole year, we don't need an additional dean or AP at any site. You know, so those kinds of things. So some of this is kind of waiting to see what the governor says, and then we'll make adjustments accordingly.
Yep. Just to go over the things that are specific to opening Jefferson would be the 2 additional support staff, 1 of the custodians, the dean of students, the technology at Jefferson, which is donor covered, the Jefferson building repairs, moving costs, utilities for that building, and kitchen equipment for that building. I totaled those all up. I got $270,900.
Jackie, are the utilities in addition to what we're paying currently to keep heat going, to keep it from rotting?
No, that is not in addition. That would be inclusive of those. So in the last year, we paid about $15,000.
Oh, 15. So it will cost more.
It will cost more, yes.
Keeping it at a more higher temperature. And Jim, you're saying that there will be fewer students in the building, which is true, but the reason for that is because we're trying to maintain the social distancing. So we're really not. We still need the same amount of staffing, even with fewer students, if we do the 2 days on, 1 day off scenario. So it's expensive. Yeah, it's a big deal. Everybody's going to be putting a lot of money into it, but the amount of students doesn't really have a whole lot to do with anything that we have control over. in our expenditures. The Jefferson School is opening that up in order to ease the busing strain, which is a major strain on the system and throughout the state. If those big districts aren't even looking at busing or how they're going to get their students to school, I would say they're like, my sister's district is the second largest in Illinois. They're going with, they're doing the whole distance learning for at least the first quarter of their year. Until this thing calms down, people are going to have to suck it up. And that means us, the costs that we have to bear, unless somebody comes to the rescue. And I don't see that exactly happening anytime soon. You know what I'm saying?
Just to be transparent on some of the other funding sources we have right now, we do have about $300,000 in CARES Act money that can go towards some of these costs. I'm looking at applying for FEMA to help reimburse some of our PPE and sanitation expenses. And then the county has also reached out that they are looking to see if they could potentially divert some of their CARES Act funds to us if we have a use for it. Well, we always have a use for it. It's just a matter of have they allocated it out yet. They haven't allocated it out yet.
Mike, I'll just say, I don't think people have to suck it up, and you can decide what you want to decide or don't think you need to vote on. The finances are our responsibility. The high school is going to have 60% of the kids, maybe even 50 with the e-learning, but we want to spend more, 150 for another principal, assistant principal, and all that. How's that teaching people? So yeah, I think we need to have a more conversation about this than some numbers thrown to us at this meeting here. I know we're not making a decision tonight,
yeah, absolutely.
But we certainly can't just sit there and say, well, whatever, we're going to have to suck it up. No, we don't have to suck it up. So I'm not.
Well, it's going to cost us one way or another.
Well, it doesn't have to be if you manage your costs right. So.
Jackie, would you mind putting together a very specific slide that would just be Jefferson only costs? The other thing is, and I really applaud the creative thinking and utilizing our resources in terms of, the person who's willing to donate some time to make those plexiglass. I really appreciate that a lot. But where else can we think outside the box in terms of saving some money? One idea I had, when you talk about I don't see the number up front right now, but the moving costs, how can we save on that? Can we utilize student power to help with that? I don't know if there's some liability issues in that, but our SOAR students and our National Honor Society students are always looking for ways that they can get some volunteer hours. I don't know. Maybe it's just going in the classroom and helping a teacher unpack or pack. I don't know. But are there ways to think outside the box? And I know that our admin staff has been doing that nonstop, but, to try and cut down some of these costs, because in the end, I think the most important thing is to get our kids back in our buildings. There's numerous research that shows that in-person learning is important. Our kids, especially our little kids, they need to be together. That social emotional piece. I think about the kindergartners, and I love that our plan is K through 4. Let's get every kid in every single day. That I think should be one of our top priorities. And unfortunately, it's going to cost some money. We have to have 3 additional custodians just to make sure we get some deep cleaning. That doesn't include Jefferson at all. So I think we do have to make some sacrifices, but I think we have to make some smart sacrifices. So where we can save money, we absolutely need to. But if we do have to spend some, I think that I think most of the people who are what was it, the 60% of parents who said they want their kids in school, I think people understand that we're all trying to make some sacrifices here, and I want to be mindful of spending taxpayer money, but I think that the majority of the people will understand if we need to spend a little bit more right now to get through a pandemic and be able to provide the best product that we can for our students. Jamie.
I think I
Too. It kind of goes off of what you said, Pam. I mean, I think there's some cost savings here that's left out. I know Carson and I brought up to you, I'm a little bit surprised that we've already bought Chromebooks and we've already paid for that lease. I guess I'm just concerned why we're not looking at other districts of what they do as far as the lease and rental and having families take care of that. I am completely supportive of taking care of that for people in financial need, but we have a lot of people that in other districts where you lease and rent by the year. So I just was a little bit surprised to see that 94,007 on there. And then, just the idea of making sure we have waivers so that people can volunteer and help with this moving processes, and that donations are going to, this might be a time that we have to be very real with the public. And I have heard people that want to be able to help, whether it's buying, donating to buy one of these cooler packs for the milk. I think this is a time where our community has to come together. And if we're going to make this happen for kids to have the safest, most critical time of just consistency and them learning, that we're going to have to come together and decide where we're going to be able to put donations and how we're going to ask for help. So I just wanted to add that I guess I'm still very unclear where we are with the Chromebooks, because I see that is something that could have been maybe saved.
Yeah, if I could jump in there about the Chromebooks. We purchased Chromebooks last spring after COVID occurred. So we moved up our 5-year plan for technology because we knew we had to provide devices for every child, because of distance learning, or at least have them offered. And so we bought those, but we agreed to having a lease instead of a straight purchase. So we knew we'd get some funds from the federal government, the $300,000 that Jackie was talking about, but we didn't want to spend it all that year because we knew we'd have other expenses. And so we set up the lease, and this year's cost is about $95,000 or so. So again, it was part of the 5-year technology plan. We had everything set so that we'd spend, so much per year fulfilling the technology promises. But because of COVID, we had to accelerate those purchases. It's really the only way.
Karsten, do we own the Chromebooks or are we leasing them?
We're making yearly payments. I'm calling that a lease. It's just a way of how we're paying back for the purchases that we made. Kevin, if you're on the line, please, or Jackie, if you want to correct me on that, please let me know.
It is a lease to purchase, so we are leasing them. They are considered ours, but we have 5 years of payments on them.
Right. We own them at the end of and we can sell them back if we'd like.
All right. Is that how most people would be doing it, since they're kind of perishable, not perishable, but they go out of, well, I don't know about Chromebooks, but would most districts be doing more of a rental plan like that? You're leasing them for a period of time, like leasing a car, and then after the 5 years, you get new ones? So it's costing us $96,000, $100,000 a year.
Yeah, I in the past was not a believer in leasing. It was always cheaper to buy, but this company that we're working with does it nationwide, and their buying power is incredible. So we're not paying any more to lease them, and then they guarantee us that they'll buy back anything we have at the tail end. So we're actually leasing them cheaper than we could buy them for, Jim. I mean,
Right.
Yeah. So, how many students do we have in the district?
About 2,700.
I did a calculation with 2,000 students in it. Is it $48 a year per student?
I'd have to go back and look on the lease to see what the actual yearly is. I don't recall off the top of my head.
6,000 divided by 2,000. So anyway, it's yeah.
And we didn't, just so you know, we didn't lease all of them. We've got like 1,400 releasing the balance we own.
All right. Yeah, I figured there was something in there. That was too cheap. All right, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Karsten.
My apologies, Heidi. We'll circle back to you.
Oh, well, I was going to offer, does Mr. Gaylor have a comment that's cogent to this discussion that's happening right now? He's on the queue also.
I do, and I would just like to reach out
Okay.
and let you know that as you're talking about the $15,000 for help or whatever, we do have. I've reached out to STS. We have some crews that they're starting to get back together. It's $200 a day, and I've reached out to them and told them that we probably will need their services. Maybe 3 to 5 days a week. So they are informed that we do need that help.
And that's SDS then for sentence to serve.
50,000.
I'm sorry, what?
SDS stands for sentence to serve.
Correct. Correct.
And what kinds of jobs would you have them be doing, Alan?
Basically, well, if we go into a hybrid situation, it's going to be moving furniture from building to building. That would probably be the main thing that we would have them do. Not so much the cleaning part of it. They could help us get ready for that. I feel pretty confident as far as where we're at in cleaning to start where we're going to be, but it would be more just for logistical getting buildings ready for that hybrid or distance learning or in-person learning.
Alan and Kevin, have they changed the Sentence to Serve program where you can pay by the day, or do you have to buy a half a year service for X number of hours, or a contract, annual contract, X number of hours, or can you buy it service by the day, week, or month?
We're able to buy it by the day, Jim.
Yep,
changed
and
that.
it's $200 a day, Jim.
Yeah.
Right now, they have a crew leader with 2 people that they can go out with. If you go into the not the jail part of it, but if you go out to the
Probationary?
out to the prison where they have more of the guys come with,
Yep.
then they're allowing more 6 to 8 people come with, but they're still tweaking that. When I talked to her, she said that right now it's 2 people that are going with a crew leader, but things are changing fluidly.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay.
All right, circling back to you, Heidi.
Okay, thanks. I guess, the numbers, I think they're realistic. I've had enough experience with this district that we're thoughtful, we're careful, we're looking at different options here. So I'm not surprised by the numbers because it's something I've been kind of asking for all along as far as the costs. We do know we're getting $330,000 from the CARES Act. I don't know if that's been taken into account already. So this $875,000 is above and beyond that. And I think most of that was sort of designated or had strings attached that it needed to be technology support. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, there's this HEROES Act. This is exactly why school districts were talking to Senator Smith's staff about the realities of what we have got to do, because the first bump of federal assistance through the CARES Act is not near enough. And I bet there's districts in worse situations than we are. And so this is where we start connecting the dots about the reality of the situation. And it's all to keep kids safe, the distancing, the busing, the cleanliness, the extra routines. And then unfortunately, there's also been a federal funding threat out there that is not to be taken seriously, because Congress has already enacted and approved the funds we receive. And the President and the Secretary of Education do not have authority to withdraw that or change it. And then, I mentioned earlier in the meeting too, we normally maintain a 5% fund balance reserve policy. It's to address situations like this where I wish we had a 15% fund reserve. In reality, we don't. I think it takes a little more political courage than we've been willing to demonstrate over the years. But at least we have a fund balance policy, but it's pretty minimal. However, that's why we have some reserve money, is for stuff like this that you couldn't possibly have imagined would come. And I do think it's appropriate. And I've been the one saying, please, let's think smart and long-term and with a fund balance policy. But today is the biggest rainy day this district has ever faced. And if we don't use that money now, then shame on us, because that's why we have the policy there to begin with, is so we can smooth out some bumps in the road when the unexpected hits. And here we are big time. So I just have to accept this is where we're at. And a lot of what we're looking at is one-time costs. So some of this, like the technology investments and stuff, will carry forward. We had to move up costs. We're getting some donations. Great. But here we are. And I think this is what we're going to just have to step through out of necessity. So that's where I'm at. Thanks for listening.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Heidi's right. This is the biggest thing we've ever had, and probably the rainy day funds for this. But let's step back a minute and look at the projected budget that we are looking at in year 22, 23, 24, 25, spending it already that we have built up. So you can't spend it now and then look at spending it and then go and dig into it later either. So we have to be cautious. We have to be prudent. We have to be precise on how we're doing our finances now, because it may be raining, the creek's overflowing, but down the road the dam is breaking. So you better be ready and do things now to prepare yourself for the future. And so that's why we have to question it. That's why we have to look at it carefully and come up with something that will work for now and in the long run.
Yep.
Be quiet.
Thank you, Jim. I think, Arlen, you're next.
Thank you. I am certainly sensitive to the idea that we're going to be deficit spending this year, but frankly, I don't understand why anybody would not deficit spend this year to keep our school running if that's what we're going to do. I'm not sure if I want our kids in school in September or not, or if they should stay home. But if they're going to be in school, by gosh, we better do the best we can to give them an opportunity to learn in our schools in as safe an environment as we possibly can give them. And so I am not going to be hesitant at all to approve spending money to keep our district open. There are other places there will be some money saved, possibly. The area where I'm looking at is I think we need to look seriously at curtailing a lot of our athletic expenses this year, but we don't know where we're at with the state high school league, but that's where I've been pushing to take a look at our expenses on coaches and such. I really can't see how we can play football this fall. I really don't see it. And there's many other sports, and there's a lot of money in that athletic budget that probably won't be spent. However, I don't have a crystal ball that tells me positively what will happen this year. I just don't see us doing much in that activities way this fall, at least. I wish we could go back to what we had now, but that's not an option. Our option is to make the best of the situation we have here right now. If I had a child going through college and I was footing the bill for their college and they had 1 year to go, and I'd say, oh, gee, I guess I got sick. I had to go to the hospital. I had to spend $10,000 that year. But I got savings, but I'm not going to spend it this year, so my kid's not going to go to college that year. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to see to it, if there's any way to educate our kids this year in as close to normal setting as we possibly can, I'm going to do it. And so I will back this within reason, and I'm not going to say it's a blank check, but anything reasonable. And I've gone on record with a few people saying, I know it's going to cost at least $500,000. I think it's probably going to cost us $1 million to do this year. I'm prepared to spend that if it's necessary. I'm not going to write out a black check, but I will do what's necessary within our means at this time to get there. And yes, it's kicking the can down the road on our finances 5 years from now, but I'm not going to shut our school down this year because I want to fund balance 4 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlen. Holly?
Well, first of all, Arlen, that's easy for you to say because you won't be on the board in 4 years. Will you? Are you going to run again?
You never know.
Okay. Because in 4 years we could go, what were we? No, I'm kidding. I'm really curious to know, Karsten, what you feel about the busing situation in terms of if we don't have enough buses for kids, what does that look like?
Yeah, and again, I'm hopeful that the state will provide guidance because nearly all schools are in the same situation. We do have a couple of alternatives if we don't have room. First of all, we could, consider keeping 7th grade at Twin Bluff, so it's a K-7 school. That would help transportation because the middle school is closer to the center of town, whereas the high school is way at one end. The location is really killing us. So if we kept 7th grade in the middle school, that would help with transportation. I know that some people have suggested that we convert Colville into a neighborhood school as well, because then more people would be in the walking zone for Colville. I did not share that thinking with transportation people, and so they've been operating under the assumption that Colville would stay as it is. But if we really had to, we could consider that change. On the third one that maybe I already mentioned this, but this is the most logical thing. Right now, we have very specific guidelines in terms of implementing special transportation services. Obviously, we want to keep our social distancing with all buses, general ed and special transportation, don't get me wrong. But, it would make a lot of sense to be able to fit more kids on the special transportation routes as long as they go well having general ed kids on those buses. The problem with that is that there's a cost associated with it because we get a significant reimbursement for the state if it's just special transportation, but then we only receive a prorated amount if we have general ed kids on there. So, that potentially could be one solution, and I would hope that the state recognizes these transportation issues and gives us flexibility to use the special transportation as we need to. So those are 3 quick things. Oh, and then the fourth one we want as many parents to drop off their kids every day. That's a huge ask that we want, from our parents. At a previous meeting, I made the mistake of really encouraging just anyone to, some people took it that, just anyone should, volunteer to drop off kids. Obviously, we don't want to spread the virus, and so if it's safe to do so, we want the parents to drop off the kids, or if the child spends a lot of time with grandparents and the grandparents, that kind of thing. And then 5th is something that Jim mentioned regarding the hybrid. If we're in a hybrid mode with the way we've described it, our transportation issues are greatly alleviated because we won't have to transport as many high school kids on a given day. The problem is that, we don't know if we're going to be in hybrid or in-person learning. So we're kind of assuming we're in in-person learning, coming up with a plan. Not spending more money on the plan yet, but at least coming up with a plan to address each of the scenarios.
Because I think that's the $1 million piece, getting kids to school.
Yes, it's the biggest barrier that we have. And I'm just thankful that we're not alone.
Right. Right.
You know, there's one district, I won't mention the name, but has about 110 buses in the fleet. And you know, the estimated costs of the additional routes needed for them are astronomical, and it would be impossible. It's impossible for them to add, you know, likely one bus to the system because the buses just aren't available anywhere. And you know, trying to reduce a bus capacity to 25 or 30 kids on a bus, you know, is tough for us and tough for that larger district too. So,
Because I can see it.
Be a state solution.
But I can see it becoming an issue because right now there's no federal law that says we have to transport kids on a school bus. But we get into the mode of we do transport kids on a school bus, but I can see that becoming a very tricky issue in COVID.
Yes.
On whether or not we will have to transport kids
Yeah.
to school if for some reason their family can't get them to school.
And right now we have, you know, state law that says we have to transport anyone over 2 miles, and that districts can decide if we want to lower that, you know, limit. And so we've chosen to lower it for, you know, many years, you know, a mile for elementary, 1.5 miles for middle school. We can go up to 2 miles, but we can't extend that no bus zone beyond that. We have to provide the transportation according to current law. And it's the right thing to do. We want everyone to be able to make it to school. So don't get me wrong, you know, but, you know, it's a big issue.
But it could shut the whole thing down.
Yes. Transportation and personnel are the two big issues because we need to make sure that our staff members are safe and healthy as well. Some of them are in the high risk category or they have family members who are. And so there'll be a lot of tough decisions ahead for staff members as well.
Okay, thank you.
And Mike?
Yes, speaking of staffing, have we heard anything from teachers on call about the availability of substitutes? I could see the potential for a lot of people who are currently subbing to not want to take the risk to come in and teach in a school. And I'm wondering if they're offering more money or expecting more money in a hazard pay kind of formula for some of them. I just wonder if you've heard anything at all from them.
Well, certainly you're right. It's going to be a tough environment to find you know, substitutes. However, you know, we can set our own pay rate for those substitutes. If we need to increase the daily rate of pay, then, you know, we're gonna have to consider that. You know, there's a cost to that. We still do have the 3 emergency subs through Teachers on Call. And so I haven't ended that relationship yet because I think we need a little more information before we do that. And then, you know, I was talking to a community leader and a parent, or at least the former parent of a student. And she is really excited about the possibility of talking to kids in their 20s, mid-20s, who may have a college degree, but right now they're at home. And a sub-teaching job would be perfect for them. Also, you know, even those who are in college or choosing not to go to college this fall could certainly sign up to be a substitute paraprofessional because, you know, teachers and paraprofessionals are going to be 2 critical needs that we need to fill. And really, you know, all those folks could also serve in food service and custodial care because we need subs for everyone. So that's one of the target audiences we're thinking about.
I'd think potentially people choosing to stay home from college would be staying home for a reason and wouldn't be going into other schools to earn money, although they could. And there's more unemployed people as well, so there is more people who need to make money. But I was just curious if you'd heard anything from them.
Yeah, really, as far as the college kids, a lot of them are going to be participating in distance learning, at least first semester. And so, at least this parent thought that, her own kids and their friends' kids or their daughters or their kids' friends would be willing to at least sub, for 6 hours a day and then still work on their homework during their own time. I don't know if that's going to work out, but that's kind of the thinking we have. I mean, it's
Sounds like a hopeful parent.
yeah. I mean, it's $145 a day. So, we're hoping that at least a few will accept that option.
And again, it's thinking outside the box and utilizing our community resources. And I think again, there's so many more people that are willing to step forward and help us in this time than we realize even. And so I just really encourage us to continue that narrative, because there are people who have gifts to share, and we're going to need some help. So thank you to those people who are thinking and wanting to volunteer and step forward in this pandemic time. If we could go ahead and move ahead, because I know we've had this long discussion, and if we have any other questions moving forward, people know where to find you and share their questions. This is by no means the end of this conversation, because like we discussed earlier, we're going to have a special meeting as soon as the governor comes out with his plan, so that we can finalize this and talk more about how we're going to fund whatever plan that we put in place. So I very much appreciate all the background information so that we can make an informed decision when the time comes. There's a lot of information to digest here. So if you're like me, it's going to be the middle of the night and you're going to think, why didn't I ask this question? So definitely reach out, and I know that Carson will do his best and his admin team will do their best, and also entertaining your ideas, because it takes a village to come together and figure out how we're going to proceed in this plan. So thank you very much, everyone, for all of your great feedback and questions. If I could move us on further, then any last comments, Karsten, before we move on in the agenda?
Thanks for the questions and comments. Keep them coming, and we'll try to present the best possible plan at the special meeting.
Great. So be watching for that. We'll let you know, but we're going to put on the agenda or on the calendar. I think we're going to put 2 or 3 different options for special meetings, because we don't want to put this decision off until our next school board meeting, which is August 3rd. As soon as the governor makes his decision, and it could be anywhere between now and the end of the month, as I understand it. But if he makes a decision tomorrow, we certainly don't want to wait a whole nother week and a half to start discussing what we're going to put in place. So we'll more than likely put a couple of meetings on the calendar, just so that they're posted at least 3 days ahead of time, per law, to make sure that we're following those open meeting guidelines, and be watching. We'll let you know and give you some ideas of when those might be on the agenda, or on what dates. All right, Jim, I neglected to add your agenda topic to 2.4, so I'm gonna pause here and go back and give the floor to you, Jim, for your email that you would like to address. So the floor is Jim.
There you go. Thank you. Off and on all the time. It's actually a piece of mail that we got from the school district today regarding the retirees, action taken by the district office, dated, I'll back up. Mike was at a meeting. I talked to Janie a little bit about this before the labor management meeting on June 24th, 2020. On July 10th, the letter was formed to the retirees addressing a change in people that pay for their health insurance to the district that have retired. The postmark on the envelope was July 17th. It came today. The meeting for these retirees is Wednesday, a day from now. The other thing is, why are we switching? What is the cost? Why isn't the person whose job description has this in it doing the job? Why hasn't this been brought to the board and a change just has been made for people that are retired, have dedicated their time to the district, and we're just throwing them aside to, instead of coming up and paying the district? This is, and I know this went to the management team, the labor management team, but it still should come to the board because there is going to be a cost. It's just going to be an inconvenience for people. This is what's in what I would say the human resource job description. But she doesn't want to do it, so we're going to ship it out somewhere else. That's why isn't somebody making this person do this?
Can we not say that these people don't want to do it?
That's exactly it, because people are calling me, telling me this, Mike. So I know what I'm talking about.
The
So
large
there is
reason,
no, let me finish, Mike.
go ahead.
Thank you. This should come to us because this affects all the retirees. And then the retirees get the letter for a meeting on the 22nd of July, dated the 10th of July, mailed on the 17th, and comes into today's mail. Who's paying this cost? What is the cost? Why are we having consultant costs when we're trying to look at ways to spend money for the COVID stuff? So I would have done this a different way, but it came today in today's mail, and the meeting is in a day, or Wednesday, less than 48 hours. So I would suggest you cancel this meeting and get some discussion going. And why are we doing this? It just doesn't make sense as to why. And I know somebody said it takes 15 hours to enter the checks. Baloney. And that the person before that did less than a day. And Jackie's entering them, which I was told that that's what she does. We're paying them $74 an hour for her service. Why are we doing that? So a lot of questions. I don't mean to vent, but I think this is totally wrong, and I'm not in favor of for all the retirees. And somebody has to stand up and speak up for them.
Jim, can I just respond to the mailing? It was put in the mailbox at the post office on the 13th. I don't know why yours was delayed, but I have been getting calls from retirees since the 15th.
I got the envelope. I can certainly show it to you right here. July 17th, July 20. So,
Okay. I'm not sure what happened there.
but why are we doing it anyway?
Yeah, and if I, Jackie, if you can jump in a second, but I'll at least explain in a general sense the process. I know this possibility or plan came about administratively, but then we did take it to the Personnel Committee for review. And then I believe that proposal or that information was included in Personnel Committee notes. And then one of the really good suggestions that came out from the committee is to take it to the Labor Management Committee. And so kind of in a general sense, from my recollection, that's the process that was used. But I think Jackie can explain exactly what's happening and why.
Yeah, so when our former personnel person left the district, we inquired with our insurance consultant IntelliSense on ways we could do things better in the district office. One of their suggestions was to use a third-party processor for retirement and COBRA benefits. We did implement this partially, thinking we would do a grandfather in starting in January of 2019. We found this has worked very well for the individuals that are on it, and have decided to move it to the other retirees who have retired before January of 2019. There is a cost with it. The cost is $6.25 per retiree, which equates to about $600, $660 a month. There's 110 retirees right now.
By the way,
we have made
Jackie,
reduction. What?
Jackie, if I could just jump in, I think Jim may have been kicked out of the meeting because I saw a notification. So I'm wondering if we should just make sure that Jim has a chance to rejoin the meeting before we keep going.
Okay, I can pause.
Okay. Sorry about jumping in, but I thought, you know, he should at least hear the information. I'm going to give him a call here to see if he's having a hard time getting on.
While we're waiting, help me remember this, Janie, but I thought we had a discussion about this very thing during the meeting. Through the last couple of agendas, but I didn't see it. But I'm pretty sure we had a conversation during the school.
We
meeting.
did.
I got kicked off, so.
We
I'm
did.
back.
We're waiting for you, Jim, for Jackie to
Thank you.
finish. All right. Jim, what was the last part you heard before you got kicked off?
That I was right.
That this would cost, it will cost us about $660 a month. We have made reductions in the supply budget and some of the consultant budget for the business office to make this work as not an additional cost to the district. That is, we are putting out a letter. We put out a letter to the retirees. It went out, or it was intended to go out in the mail on Monday the 13th. I had a staff member put them in the post office box down by the post office. I have had a number of retirees calling with questions. We have an information meeting on Wednesday night for them to get more information and to ask more questions. Following that, we will start the transition process. Once their account is transitioned over to Alerus, they will receive a welcome packet with information on where to send their checks and how to pay. There are more payment options with Alerus than there is with the district. And then once we have done the transition, the payments will go to Alerus, and there will be a grace period in between where the payments can come to either entity. And if they come to the school district, we'll report them to Alerus. There are a number of retirees this will not impact until January because they pay a year ahead. But there are a number, probably more than half, that pay on a monthly basis.
So why is this change?
It has a lot to do with compliance.
Let her answer. Let her answer, Mike.
Well,
She's supposed to be the person that's in charge in that office. We contract with an outside vendor.
Why the change?
Yes.
Because of the changes in the job description to where the HR coordinator is now working hand in hand with administration on investigations. Because this has, since I have been working in the district, we have increased about 40% in the number of retiree payments we are now processing. That's a lot of the
right,
And
Jackie?
the job descriptions, has the job description changed, been rewritten?
We're in the process of updating it
So it's
currently.
updating it, but we made this change before you updated it. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, Jackie, would you mind outlining some of the benefits to the retirees? I know that some retirees enjoy driving across town to drop off the check because it gives them a chance to chat with their friends and former colleagues. But what are the advantages of switching over?
They will, if they choose to pay monthly by check, they will get a coupon book, much like the old car payment system, to send in with their payment. There are online payment options where you could do online, you could go in and pay online, you could pay by credit card. You can go in and there's an online portal where you can go in and easily see your balance information. Things the district can't offer right now without the retirees either coming in, emailing, or phone calling a staff member.
There's also the compliance issue where the laws are fairly fluid and we cannot keep up with them. We don't have time to do all that work. We don't have the employees with the time and training and legal aptitude to be able to do that kind of stuff. So we outsource it, which is generally a way of doing a job for less money than you could do it on your own. And that's why people outsource, and it keeps us in compliance with the law. So we have less chance of having problems further down the road. It's not a big deal for people to change where they're sending their checks. It is a big deal for a limited staff in the office to be dealing with people coming in and out and visiting. And it's not an efficient way to run a business. It's not an efficient way for us to run our front office. We're trying to take a load off of people who are fully loaded with what they're doing. And it's a relatively inexpensive way to achieve that. And if somebody has to bear a burden, then somebody has to bear a burden. But if that burden is changing where you're sending your money to, that's a pretty small burden to share with the rest of us who are trying to make this district work.
Usually outsourcing is there to save you money or save you time. I don't see it saving time and money here. I see maybe saving a little time for somebody else because they want to do something else, but I don't know. And then what laws are you talking about, Mike?
That's something else is
what laws are you talking about?
I don't know. You'll have to
go. You said you knew about the laws.
Disparaging.
I thought maybe you knew what they were.
I trust people who know what they're talking about. So, but this district has gotten into a really bad habit of disparaging our employees. And we really need to do a better job of critiquing the things that we're doing and less of a job of saying that these people aren't doing their job. You know, our job is to oversee the district, to give guidance to Karsten, to have Karsten implement what he thinks is best, and for everybody who works underneath him to have their people doing what they think is best. Our job is not to judge the employees' work. That's their boss's job. We are not their bosses. And we have people on this board disparaging and chasing people away, chasing away employees because of the way we address them. And if that's what you guys want to do, good luck to you. But it's not a way to gain favor and to do good work. That's all I got to say. I'm done.
Kind of like the way you're talking to us right now.
We're equals, right?
We are voted by the 20,000 people in this district to get things brought before us to get answers. You can sit there and be Karsten's little right-hand man and tell him he's the only one he has to work for is you, or you have to work for him. But we represent 20,000 people in this district from all walks of life. And you can sit and say we don't have to have a say in this. We do. So I don't need to be lectured by you about what my role is.
I'm not lecturing you, Jim.
Oh, you're not, huh?
This district has an issue.
You're not.
Call this. One thing that I do want to mention is that we have had this discussion prior, Jim, at the board level. We discussed this already here in this forum, and I was looking back in my agenda and I don't see it in the last two meetings, but that doesn't mean we didn't talk about it. I do know that we have addressed it because I remember talking about how even though we have the $6 and some cents per person, it does free up the person who was doing this work on a regular basis to be able to do other things. And so we're actually able to kind of spread out a little bit more. So I do know that we've had this conversation. And so Holly, I'm going to turn it over to you. You're next in queue.
Just real quick, we have not had this discussion, Madam Chair. You had it in personnel, not at this board meeting.
No, it was at a board meeting.
Well, Jim, it was brought up during committee notes. I specifically brought it up. So I think we should move on. I think your voice.
I don't have any problem moving on, but I'm just saying it.
Your points have been heard. I think we should move on.
Holly.
She there?
I think you're on mute, Holly.
Holly, do you have anything to share?
Yes, sorry. I hear what you're saying, Mike. And and it does bring some personal feeling. But I'm going to choose not to go down that road. But much like Jim, it's not okay to lecture people when you yourself have done things similar to what you're getting upset with people for doing. So I just want that out there, that if there's supposed to be a clean slate, or if we're supposed to be acting a certain way, when we joined the board, that wasn't happening. So I don't know what blueprint you're coming off of, but that wasn't the blueprint that we got when we got here. So I know everybody works hard on the board. I know everybody takes time, more time than others on some issues, but I'm really uncomfortable every time that happens. And I think people do have a right to say what they need to say.
I think they should say what they want to say, but not disparage other people. That's all I'm saying.
And I'm very much looking forward to continuing this conversation on Monday when we have our self-evaluation, because I think this is, I think we're bubbling up on a bigger issue that we need to resolve as a board. And so I very much look forward to having that conversation. I don't mean to diminish this discussion at all, but I think that we do need to move on. This meeting is getting awfully lengthy, and I want us to keep moving forward. But I do definitely think that we need to have this discussion further on Monday, and I look forward to that. Thank you, Jim, for bringing that up. And now we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is Jefferson School Purchase Agreement. Superintendent Anderson. I think you're on mute.
Sorry about the delay. I'm having a hard time turning on and off the mute button. Well, once again, our favorite topic is the Jefferson School purchase agreement. And I won't go through all the iterations that we've experienced for the past few years in terms of selling Jefferson School. But currently we sit in a situation where we do have a purchase agreement entered into with Jim Patterson for the sale of the school. That the due diligence period of that agreement will expire on or about August 1st. I believe, and I'm confident Jim Patterson would say the same thing, that we have a mutual interest in terminating the purchase agreement. I did ask the school's law firm to develop that proposed termination agreement, which is attached. I'm not expecting the board to approve it tonight. I'm just presenting it as an FYI, so that as we make decisions about next fall, that hopefully in late July, that we could consider approving this termination agreement. It really just outlines in a formal way that the process is done. So that's one option. Another option would be to approve a termination agreement with the inclusion of a right of first refusal for Mr. Patterson. When I initially gave him the first copy of a proposed purchase agreement, then he came back with the idea of possibly adjusting that with a right of first refusal. And so I'm just presenting both of those options to the school board for a discussion today. And then based on the discussion, I can bring back something in late July when we meet again. Any thoughts?
Janie.
I just had a question. I'm a little bit uncomfortable that we're having to pay our lawyers and different fees for terminating this purchase agreement. Did we have anything in the contract protecting us from this? Since if I understand, I mean, granted, everything kind of worked out, but really indeed, Mr. Patterson, kind of let this keep on going and didn't necessarily keep his end of the bargain. And it all worked out. So things happen for a reason, but I guess, do you know anything in the contract that would maybe the fees could be paid by him or something? I guess I'm very disappointed to hear that we have to pay our legal team to write up papers?
Yeah, we do not have a clause in the contract that would require Jim or anyone else to reimburse us for legal expenses with any part of the purchase agreement or the termination of the purchase agreement. So, the actual development of this particular agreement, is not particularly costly. Probably, or the greater expenses would have been, going through the RFP process and then negotiating a purchase agreement and then doing it all over again and then, doing it all over again. So, the actual termination agreement here, is a pretty small price in the grand scheme of things.
Arlen.
Thank you. Frustration is probably the best word I got to say about this whole thing here. Maybe a blessing that we have it going into next year, maybe a hindrance. I'm not going to go that route. I looked at these termination agreements. If we're going to sign anything, I want to make absolutely positive that if we terminate his agreement, the city of Red Wing terminates theirs simultaneously, because I sent you a message. I didn't hear back from you on that here, Carson, if we got that there. But if we are going to do it, then I think it's imperative that we make sure that we aren't forced to sell to the city of Red Wing the other part of the property. I said from the start, I thought we should have some non-refundable earnest money. That didn't go anywhere. I'm very frustrated on that. I get that we've had a lot of stuff go on. COVID's come along. I'm not going to go anywhere, but I certainly would not be in favor of granting a right of first refusal without money in the game that we get to keep regardless. So if Mr. Patterson wants to suggest a right of first refusal, then I think he needs to put up a certain amount, a substantial amount. That's a vague term, but that gives him the right to do that without us going through the process again next year, if that's what we're intent is a year from now to go this route. Because I really don't want there is absolutely no reason we would give it to him for nothing, in my mind. And I'd be very upset if we did. So I guess my only question is it in our interest to get something signed sooner rather than later so we can go on with plans for this fall, if that's where we're headed? It seems to me if this August 1st or August 3rd or whatever, if he doesn't come through, that terminates the agreement. I don't think there's anything that needs to be written at all that I can see. If he wants to have something that gets him off the hook, then he should participate in paying part of the fees to write a termination agreement. But I want to make sure that if we're going into Jefferson, that we're free and clear on this thing all the way from all angles. I trust that you're consulting with the attorney to get that done right. But I certainly am not in favor of any possibility of giving him basically an option to buy it next year without him paying for such a thing. So thank you.
If I could just jump in real quick, Arlen, and respond to the first comment that you made as far as the city. I just double checked my email, and earlier this afternoon, Kate Coleman from the city did let me know that if and when we sign the agreement, they will put it on their next agenda. So that meeting at the city is July 27th. So that process is already in motion. They need to double check, the agreement with their attorney, but it sounds like it's agreeable to at least the city's administration.
Well, yeah, but that's nice. What happens if the city board doesn't go along with the administration on it?
Right. I think the agreements themselves would not allow that, but I'm confident that we'll be able to make this work with all three sides.
Thanks, Arlen. Jim?
Thank you. I agree with what some of Janie and Arlen just said. Frustration is probably a kinder word than what's come to my mind. Mr. Patterson sat before us and basically talked about how great his proposal was, and how the other proposal was horrible, or not horrible, but not as good as his. Now he doesn't want to proceed with it. It's and shame on us for not making them have earnest money down to pay for our bills and fees. That's a no-brainer. You do it on houses all the time. So I think if he wants to have any say in the game down the road, he needs to compensate us for our expenses before we even have a conversation about right for first refusal. And in that sense, we have to come up with some motion, because the last motion on the table was to sell the building. That's still on the table. So.
Anybody else have anything else they'd like to add to this conversation?
Yeah, if I could jump in, could you please clarify for me, Karsten, about the August 1 end of due diligence period? I just don't know how much processing we need to do if the agreement is just going to run out on its own at the beginning of August. Do we need to do something before then?
Yeah, and I was trying to access the agreement earlier today, and I wasn't able to do so. I can certainly send the agreement out to you when I can access it, so that everyone can read the terms. But my understanding is the same as Arlen's, that after it passes due diligence period, that the termination agreement or that the termination of the sale is essentially done. But our attorney did suggest that we create this termination agreement just to be crystal clear with everyone involved. So that's why we set it up that way. But I can double check the agreement and forward it on to all of you to take a look.
That sounds good. We don't need to make it or have any action tonight at this time on this.
Yeah, I just might like to make this as clean as possible, and I am not interested in providing a right of first refusal either. I think we just need to move on, and if after this year, if we are back in the selling business, everybody just has a fair chance to start at the same starting point. I don't really look at it otherwise. All right, thank you.
All right. Anything else?
I have my name out there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead, Arlen.
I don't know if it need a board action, but I would like to request that Karsten come back at the August 3rd meeting and consult with the attorney and say, yes, it's over, or no, it's not. And if it's not, do whatever we got to do. I personally don't need the agreement sent to me. I'm not the attorney. I'm not the one to make the legal opinion. There's no need for it for me. So I just want sound advice, make the decision. And I'd like, if we're not doing it tonight, I think it should come back to us August 3rd. And I don't want to make a motion to table or anything. I just want to suggest that.
Karsten, are you plan?
Yeah, I mean, I can check with the attorney to see, to double check the necessity of having an actual termination agreement before August 1st. So, let me check with the attorney on that, and then we can kind of go from there if we need it to add to this special meeting, or if we can just wait till August 3rd.
Can we just have that termination papers if we need to do it by August 3rd?
Can we have the what again?
Termination papers. I think all we need to do is say that we, because of this is terminated, and you haven't lived on this, we have terminated the agreement. And have that for action August 3rd, if it's possible.
Yeah, and that's the part I'll check with the attorney about.
So you'll get back to us on that, and if we have to add it to a special meeting sooner rather than later, we certainly can do that.
Sounds good.
Anything else on the Jefferson School purchase agreement? All right, long-term facilities maintenance plans. Mr. Johnson.
Okay.
Kevin, are you there? Oh, there you go.
Sorry, I'm just pulling up so you can, it's going to be small, but at least it'll be on the screen. I know it's in the board package you can look at. This is the form that we fill out each year for long-term facility maintenance, which includes health and safety. Each year, the department requires districts to review their plan, and statute is also requiring that for the 2021 school year, fiscal year 22 budget. So I'll go through it quick. I know it's getting long here. I'll certainly answer questions as I get to the end of it if you like. Budget codes, basically, if you look down them, they're going to be very similar to last year. A couple of exceptions are the Burnside parking lot, which we've been saving LTFM dollars for the last several years, just covering almost the entire project. A couple other bigger things. We are doing a couple of stadium scoreboards, one of which is at the high school field, which is the main one. Fiscal 22, 2000. Again, most of the programs are similar to past years. Just share a couple of larger projects for next summer. The wireless microphone systems in the auditorium and the cafeteria at the high school. You've probably noticed during some meetings when we were still getting together that the microphones had cut out now and then. That's because we are now on the cell phones frequency. The FCC has changed those. So if anybody uses a phone or texts or anything like that, it has a chance of cutting out that microphone during a meeting. So those systems will be changed out. Another big thing that we need to do, believe it or not, our tennis courts are in a couple of years are going to be at the, is it 6 or 7 year mark? I forget. And they're due for crack sealing, line repair, surface, to keep
Fan?
the courts that we have in good shape. So, yeah, Mike. Oh, I thought I heard you speak. Sorry. A couple of other items. Arc Flash, that's of the high school. That's a certification that OSHA has required for several years now, and we really need to do that. It's there to protect our workers, that anybody actually who works on electric panels, and it is a requirement. Another big one is the roof top or makeup air unit for the metal shop at the high school. Maintenance wise, it's been very expensive the last few years. It's getting worse and worse. So that's something we're recommending we replace a summer from now. It's because maintenance is far over what it should be. And if you look forward, we've reduced what we're asking for in our HVAC and capital type replacements, kind of pushing things out a little bit further. And the reason for that is, or was the district, the Department of Education and the state, their revenues have been flat, or they're going to be flat for the foreseeable future. We have declining enrollment, and as you can see, when they have Jackie fill out the revenue form, it's flat from next year all the way through the end, which we know is not a real number, but that's what the department puts in. Those numbers will go down a little bit because of declining enrollment. So one of the things that we've looked at doing to help reduce this, and I'm taking the dollars out of the chart here already, is return to buildings and grounds staff doing some of the most, or actually all of the tuck pointing and water sealing on our buildings. This dramatically reduces costs to the district. We were doing a really nice job. We had a lot of compliments when we did the referendum review. The referendum did update that. We would have to train a couple people who are willing to do that, so we do it right, because we need to do it as well as the contractor, or to me, there's no point in doing it. And it would require a couple of summer helpers, a few summer helpers to do the cleaning to whichever people go tuck point. would do for just the summer. So this is the long-term capital list, and this LTFM is something that Alan, myself, the operations committee really needs to look at closely over the next couple of years to kind of get our arms around how do we get done what we need to do with our declining revenues that are coming in. It's one of the things we should work on our legislators with. There should be a inflation piece to LTFM as well. That's what I have on for the Red Wing Schools site or portion of it. Do you have some questions? Any questions on the Red Wing part? Otherwise, I'll roll into the GCED LTFM request as well.
May I? I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand, Pam.
Go ahead.
Okay, can I just make a motion to approve the long-term facility maintenance plan for district, or the resolution approving school district number 256 long-term facility maintenance 10-year plan?
I
That
will
is my
second. I'd love to second it.
Okay, so motion made by Arlen, seconded by Holly. Any other discussions? Okay. Any other discussion?
Okay, I'll go quickly.
We gotta have a vote.
Yep, let's have our roll call vote first, and then we'll move on to the resolution for 6051. Ms. Jones, I'll ask you to vote first this time.
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Mr. Christensen,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Ms. Fair,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Passes 7-0. Go ahead, Kevin.
Perfect, thank you. The next one that's on your screen and also in your packet is for the Goodhue County Education District, which you all know that we manage for them. Their numbers are essentially the same, other than a little piece of inflation in there, as last year, the same as Red Wing. The only larger project for River Bluff is we have a voice evac system for the fire alarm, which is much nicer for the students over there because it's not so loud, and it actually is a person talking to you, asking you to leave the building. Fiscal year 22, again, most program codes are similar to past year. The only one that's different is under 384 site projects. You'll see it goes from 22 up to 30 for 1 year and then back down to 22. That is the education district's portion of the Guernsey Lane mill and overlay that they did last summer, that they just finished up and we were billed for. So that's their portion of the bill for that one. It's a 1 year cost. Any questions? Excuse me, any questions on the education district? I also just stuck up here, this is how the member districts, Jackie put this together. It's kind of a pay-as-you-go and what each district pays towards that each year, or at least well for next year. Questions on GPD?
Yep, Arlen's got one.
Well, not a question, but I would encourage any questions to come after my motion. I move to approve the resolution approving school district number 6051 long-term facility maintenance 10-year plan.
Mike will second.
Motion on the table made by Arlen, seconded by Mike. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote. This time we'll start with Mr. Derricks.
Aye.
Mr. Christensen,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Ms. Fair,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay, well, those two plans have been adopted. So thank you, Kevin, for being here.
Yep, thank you very much.
next on the agenda is the school board restrictive procedures manual. Sonia Smith?
No,
No?
long-term facility maintenance plan?
We just did the long-term facilities maintenance plan.
Oh,
But
I'm sorry. I recorded things in the wrong place.
no problem.
Okay. All right, never mind.
So either Sonia or Sherry will present the next item.
Sonia or Sherry?
Sorry about that. I was, again, trying to unmute just like the rest of you. Annually, each school board in the state of Minnesota has to approve what's called our restrictive procedures plan. That is a plan as if we would have to put a student in a hold, a physical hold, or use seclusion. And that is a statute that was passed, I think back in, I forget, 97 or so. So it's been quite a while. You've seen this plan repeatedly. We do have some changes in the training this year because of social distancing. We will not be training all staff in the procedures. We are going to have building crisis teams instead. Again, I think from this meeting, you can see that COVID-19 has impacted everything we do. So I will open this up to any questions if you have them.
Sherry, this is Heidi Jones speaking. Is it okay if we approve this tonight without a building oversight team in place at Jefferson at this time?
Yes, we will add that
Okay.
if Jefferson is approved as an elementary site. That's correct. Good question.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Sherry?
I will make the motion then that we approve the restrictive procedures manual as presented this evening.
I'll second.
Made by Heidi, seconded by Holly. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote, and this time we'll start with Mr. Christensen.
Aye.
Tar?
I think was that Holly?
Ms.
Yeah,
Tower?
yeah, it got cut out. Yes.
Sorry, okay, thank you. Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Ms. Fair?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Derricks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. So the restrictive procedures manual has passed 7-0.
Okay.
Thank you. And finally, upcoming meetings and future topics. I believe GCED is having their monthly meeting on Thursday. And then next Monday, we'll be back here together again at 6 p.m. We're going to be doing that virtually with MSBA to do our self-evaluation for our board. And then sometime next week, we're going to be putting out a special board meeting to discuss our fall plan and be able to approve that so that our staff can move forward. So be looking for either the 28th, 29th, 30th, somewhere in there. Now, if our governor decides tomorrow that he's ready to make his announcement, perhaps 3 days from now, we'll be meeting again. So just know that in the next couple of weeks, we're going to need to be a little bit flexible. Arlen?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, do we want to maybe see what we have for board availability for either a Wednesday or Thursday night meeting next week? And so we could possibly post both of them and then be ready,
Sure, that's a great idea.
or not? I'm just going to suggest that.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Who could not meet on the 29th? That is what, Wednesday night? No, Thursday. Wednesday.
Wednesday.
I'm not able. Jim's not able to meet on Wednesday night.
Yeah, that's a conflict for me directly.
Okay. How about the 30th?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nope.
That's a tough night for me too, but
What's the 28th? or 20, whatever that is, that Tuesday.
This Tuesday.
I can do it. Yes.
Yep.
Works for me.
Anybody not able to do the 28th? All right, so I'm hearing no, everybody could make the 28th, so why don't we put that on the calendar as a possible special meeting? If we do not hear from the governor by then, perhaps we'll just need to wait till the 3rd. The reason I kind of wanted to get it done next week is that if we could give our staff that whole weekend of more thought and planning, that's a ginormous amount of time to give, 5 or 6 days to give our staff back for planning. So perhaps we'll, gosh, I don't know. We'll just do the 28th for now and see what happens. And we're meeting on the 27th. So if we have this discussion again on that night to see about the rest of next week. Does that seem fair, Arlen?
You're talking 6 o'clock at night, right?
Yes.
Same time? Okay.
Yes. Arlen?
Would it be possible for us to just post Tuesday night, the 28th, and Thursday night, the 30th? And then if we don't have the governor stuff, cancel the meeting?
Yes.
Or what, is that proper or not?
No, because I won't be there for the 28th.
You're the 30th.
I mean, the 30th. I won't be there for the 30th.
Hasn't he said he's gonna have it the 27th?
Yeah.
You know, the latest.
I
point-
agree.
Yeah, he indicated that that an announcement would be made no later than the week of July 27th. So, but I'm hopeful that it's going to be happening this week because there's a lot of pressure and a lot of needs for districts to do planning. So I'm hoping it's this week, but we'll see.
Well, we have the 28th down. We can all make it at 6 p.m. on the 28th. So we've got that. The other idea would be to do it at a different time. Holly, could you do it any other time on the 30th, or are you out completely on that day?
I'm out.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go with the 28th and see what happens. If need be, if we don't hear from the governor by the 27th, I guess we'll just have to wait until August 3rd.
I can meet August 1st.
Saturday?
No, isn't the 30th Thursday?
The 30th is a Thursday, so there's 31st is a Friday.
I mean the 31st.
I could meet on the 31st. Anybody not able to meet on the 31st?
So long as it doesn't go 4 hours.
So the 31st, Friday the 31st at 6 p.m. could be a possibility.
Friday night at the lake, but I'll make it work if I have to.
Yeah.
Do we have to do it on a Friday night at 6? Can you do it during the day?
Right.
I
1
could.
o'clock? Or noon or 11 or whatever. I don't know what times people's other schedules are. Why 6 o'clock on a Friday, on a weekend?
Yeah,
That's all.
Good point. How about anybody able to do a 10 o'clock on the 31st, 10 a.m.?
10 a.m., sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
10 a.m.?
Yep.
All right, so that'll be our second fallback date. Hopefully we won't have to use it. Hopefully we'll be able to meet earlier next week, but I heard 6 p.m. the 28th or 10 o'clock a.m. on the 31st for a possible special meeting. If we don't need it, we can just cancel it, but at least we'll have those on the calendar just in case. All right. Sounds good. Let's hope we hear sooner rather than later. Any other meetings that are coming up that anyone wants to announce?
My daughter's standing over my shoulder right now going, that's a long meeting.
I know, I'm very sorry.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Second.
Motion made by who?
Mike.
Mike, seconded by Holly.
Holly.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Bryant.
I and Alan can go to bed with that Honda tonight.
Right. Ms. Fair.
Aye.
Ms. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Derricks.
Hi, I'm gonna miss you all.
Christensen
Aye.
and Ms. Tower.
Aye.
We are adjourned 7-0. Time is 9. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Bye.